The school board work session begins in 2 minutes. Please take your seats. Again, the school board work session begins in 2 minutes. The school board work session begins in 1 minute. Please take your seats. Again, the school board work session begins in 1 minute.
Good Thursday morning, everyone. I now call the May 2nd, 2024 Administrative Briefing and Work Session of the Marion County School Board to order at 9 a.m. Please silence your electronic devices to avoid disturbing others. I'll now read our board commitment statement. We are the Marion County School District Leadership Team. When we come together to work, we are efficient, effective, and productive. Our three most important characteristics are dedicated, transparent, and individually responsible. To work well together, we must demonstrate respect, confront reality, and be accountable. We will always put students first, and we will leave a legacy of success. Mirroring and modeling how our students begin each day, I ask that you please pause with us for a moment of silence. Thank you. Thank you all. I now ask the school board attorney to explain the rules for this public work session. Good morning, Attorney Powers.
Good morning. This work session is a public meeting as defined in Florida's Sunshine Law. The board is dedicated to full transparency in its meetings and its work. In compliance with the Sunshine Law, the board has adopted uniform meeting procedures, including the right for citizens to participate. The board will allow public comment regarding any work session item listed on today's agenda at the appropriate time. Speakers must fill out a request form located in the lobby and hand it to the board clerk. After the board and superintendent have completed their discussion on a particular agenda item, the board clerk will call the speaker's name in the order received. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. As required by the Sunshine Law, the board must maintain orderly conduct and proper decorum throughout this meeting. Speakers may criticize subject matter and decisions in a respectful manner, but not people. Finally, speakers must be very careful not to violate the privacy rights of others, especially students and their family members, by mentioning their names or other identifying information. Thank you for your attention to these important rules.
Thank you, Attorney Powers. Good morning, Ms. Martinez. Would you please provide the proof of publication for today's meeting?
The notice for the May 2nd, 2024 work session was published in the Ocala Gazette on April 19th, 2024. Proof of publication has been attached to board docs under proof of publication.
Thank you, and we will now begin the work session with the superintendent's administrative briefing. Good morning, Dr. Gullett, always good to see you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Always good to see you as well. Just going to do a couple quick reminders, and I hesitate to even say this publicly because it always sounds like we're recognizing people on a certain day. But yesterday, as you know, was School Principals Day, and so we really appreciate the work they do, not just yesterday, but every day. So, and I know there's a lot going on right now in schools with our assessment window for our students. So really appreciate their leadership in our schools. And also next week is a National Teacher Appreciation Week. So I know you know that's coming up. There are so many things happening, special days, awareness month, and all of that. But I just want to highlight those two and just say it's not just about the week or the day, but it's about our entire team and what they do every day for our students. So want to appreciate them. And that's it for the briefing, Madam Chair. So we're ready to move forward when you're ready.
Let's jump right in.
Okay, perfect. So our first item today, I'm going to bring Dr. Livingood forward, and she is going to introduce and provide an update on our student progression plan and the work that the team has done on this. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Board Chair Thrower, board members, and Superintendent Dr. Gullett. With guidance from our Deputy Superintendent, Dr. Talbert Irving, we are here today to provide you with Part 1 of our recommendations for the revisions to the 2024-2025 Student Progression Plan. The committee included representatives from the academic services team, such as mental health, school choice, career technical education, and student pathways and assessments. Administrators, teachers, and parents were also included in the work. I have the privilege of working and welcoming Mr. Mark Ingram to the podium. He is the curriculum coordinator for K-12. He will present the committee's work to you, and at the end of this presentation, the elementary director, senior executive director of elementary, Ms. Deborah Riedel, and I will be available for questions.
Thank you. Morning, Mr. Ingram.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Livingood. So I'm here to present our revisions to the 24-25 Student Progression Plan under the directives of Dr. Livingood and Ms. Riedel. And I'm Mark Ingram, K-12 Curriculum Coordinator. The purpose of the progression plan is from the Florida Legislature, requires each school district to establish a comprehensive plan for the progression of students as outlined for parents and staff as a guide to what students must know and be able to do to progress through each grade level toward graduation. The revision process is based on annual legislation and technical assistance from the DOE. It is understood that current and future board statutes as well as board policies or Florida statutes and board policies take precedence over the items in the plan. So if something changes at a legislative level or a board level between now and when the plan is approved or revised, that takes precedence still, but we try to keep it as up to date as possible. And we had a team including parents, teachers, counselors, administrators, and district staff suggest revisions before we came up with this document. A couple of structural changes. I'll get right into the changes this year. We added a purpose statement, similar to what I just shared, how why the DOE requires us to create a progression plan and what the purpose of it is and how we really want this to be a guiding document on that pathway to graduation for our students. We also, and this was suggested by a parent, Mr. Johnson, we also added our district vision and mission to highlight the alignment with the progression plan because obviously as a district we want our students moving and progressing through this plan. So our vision of helping every student succeed, and then our mission, we believe in our belief of high expectations, trusting relationships, transparent communications, responsibility, accountability, continuous improvement, acceleration, innovation are the foundations for our success. We just thought that was really important to start the document out with our focus on our students and our future. Again, we added this, like I had in my introduction here, to the actual progression plan, the precedence of Florida statute, Any required change made to this progression plan between the annual revisions will be communicated to the appropriate staff. The example I'll give is sometimes the state updates concordance scores throughout the year or scale scores throughout the year, and we have to communicate that, and it's not like we get to fall back in an old progression plan. We have to use the most up-to-date scores for our student progression. We had a couple notes on athletics and extracurriculars. We just added a statement where we previously said that a student could contact or a parent could contact the FHSAA office. They could also start that contract with the base school athletic director, just so that students know they can also go through their school, that they don't have to go to the FHSAA website or find someone there for needs such as their interest in participating in extracurriculars. We also added the clarification, this was in practice, but it had been missing, that ninth graders are eligible for extracurricular activities, even if they have an established high school GPA through eighth grade courses, they are eligible their first term ninth grade. For grading, we had this statement as a legacy, but it's no longer in practice. We had the no credit .00 that could be marked on a student transcript if they didn't earn anything. We do not award partial or anything like this on a student transcript. We include a grade if they complete the course. We don't override or cancel out. The transcript is a complete record of what the student did in the course. This is an added clarification for test preparation that's in state statute. You'll see it takes 2 slides because it's pretty verbose. This is what the state mentions as prohibited activities. Basically, you can't suspend the regular academic program for test prep, but then there are some allowed things that align with what we already do, but we just want to make sure we're in line with statute in here. You can distribute sample assessment books. You can provide individualized instruction on assessment taking strategies for students who are not proficient. You can provide individualized instruction in content and knowledge and skills assessed. As long as you're not suspending the regular program of curricula, and some of these things we embed in the regular program of curricula. And you can also administer practice assessment so that students are familiar and comfortable with the test layout. These are the allowed activities for test preparation. We removed the statement, notwithstanding Florida statute, a parent or guardian may request that his or her K-5 public school student be retained for the school year and the grade level to which the student was assigned. This was actually added for 21-22 for parents who wanted to retain their students because of the instruction during, the 2020 school year. But at this point, parents can still have this conversation with the school, but it's no longer a statutory requirement that we allow it. This was a statement removed to clear up a misconception. In EOC courses such as biology or algebra, students do take an end-of-year course that does count toward their overall grade, and the state statute lays that out for us, but it's not required that the student earn a passing grade on the EOC to pass the course. This fit under middle school promotion, but this is actually our focus on resiliency education. We just updated our former mental health requirements with our new state-provided resiliency education, civic, and character education requirements. And those are all laid out here, things like strategies to specific to demonstrating resiliency through adversity, strategies to develop healthy characteristics that reinforce positive core values, self-awareness, mentorship and citizenship, prevention of suicide, supporting peers, prevention of abuse and addiction. But we just want to make sure we're up to date on all this language. Similarly, we updated our numbers in our elective course requirements and our graduation requirements so that it's clear what our freshmen beginning this year are required to do as far as that personal finance and money management. Basically shifts the number of electives requirements because that's not technically a social studies course, but that's how it'll be implemented. We added the option for our CTE diploma requirement that there is a requirement of 1.5 credits in electives or work-based learning programs, and now students can earn credit for participation in career and technical education experiences. We don't have all the rule on this yet, but our CE department is working on the documentation and requirements, and that will go to the schools. We also updated our IB diploma requirements to be as specific as possible, really laying out what subjects need to be taken, what courses need to be passed, and how that all works together. This is actually one place where the progression plan has a lot of detailed information, but we really want the students to be in conversation with their school and their counselor too, to make sure they're meeting their IB diploma requirements. We removed a statement. This is a big, long statement here in red on the left. We removed it because there used to be a course limit, credit hours you could take in dual enrollment through CF. But now that they're removing on-campus dual enrollment, we don't have to worry about that. That's CF's to monitor because they're running the dual enrollment program through their campus. Similarly, we updated all of the test requirements that were in the progression plan, what scores are required to be eligible for dual enrollment, adding the digital SAT and the CLT, which we have cut scores for now. In this statement, Collegiate Academy, we made this similar. We added this to a statement about Marion Virtual, but students in the Collegiate Academy via CF will earn a diploma from their base school upon completion and will be able to participate in graduation, but will not be eligible for valedictorian and salutatorian. This is mostly because when they're not on campus, we're not able to track their GPA as well and to know who our valedictorian and salutatorian will be at the end of the year in time. But this does not mean Collegiate Academy won't honor their graduates as far as their val and sal. We added a line, and this is the last one, we added a line to our GED testing requirements to line up with what the state says. Any candidate that isn't enrolled in a K-12 program and has scored in the likely to pass range is able to take the GED, but to score on that pretest, the likely to pass range to jump right into the GED, it has to be an approved course and it has to be in a proctored environment. That's important, so you can't just come with a practice test that you've taken maybe with the ability to look up answers. And this way, we know they can be successful on the final test. These are our next step dates. We have an additional work session at the end of this month if needed, and then our final public hearing is June 11th. Okay?
All righty. Thank you very much. It's a great overview of the revisions and associated rationales. Dr. Gullett?
I just want to thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to thank the team. I know a lot of work goes into this, a lot of reviewing of the statutes, current language, and all of that. So thank you for all of your work and for those team members that are not here. And we're just open for questions. Thank you.
Great, yes, we'll open it up to the board. Who wants to lead us off?
I will.
All right, Vice Chair Conrad.
I have a couple of clarifying questions. I want to thank you and your team. Lots of work. You quickly went through this, but I was fortunate enough to sit in on one of the Zoom meetings you had, and there was great participation, getting feedback from all those involved. And so several of my questions are just clarifying points that I was unsure of.
Yeah.
And I'm going to apologize because as I made notes, I was going through the red line master. So that's how I've got it lined up. On page 39, B1, do we still give out report cards in writing?
Yes.
Okay, so everybody elementary through high school still gets a report card in print?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure, since everything is online, there's been a lot of discussion about that availability and resources.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
still in
thank
writing.
you. That's great to know. Page 48, number 5. There was a strike, I'm sorry, I keep losing, I have it pulled up here and then I lose it on my laptop, so I apologize. I've got to go back and load this again.
I have them marked, but, okay. Oh, so I was racking my brain as to why we removed that statement, but it's just because it appears elsewhere in the document. The refusal of remediation, is that the question?
Okay, I'm sorry, could you say that again? I couldn't hear you.
Let me find the line. I might have to pick on Ms. Brazica for that.
It was the parent's refusal for remediation. And
Yeah, so that was just a duplicate statement. It is on page. I'll find it.
I have it's on page 48, section 5, in my notes. I'm having to, is it?
47. Yeah, Vice Chair Conrad, yes, I agree on the presentation piece, it's 48. On the document itself, it shows as page 47, especially for those following. In print, it says page 47 of, and I found it too. So, print document 47. Mr. Ingram.
So I think I have it here.
And really, I was just concerned, my concern is for our teachers. You know, if our teachers and teams have identified a student as needing remediation, can a parent override that to say, no, they're not participating in remediation?
So it's a statutory requirement that we do provide, that teachers provide remediation to any student with a reading or math deficiency. So they are required to provide it.
Perfect, that makes me
Yes.
very happy.
Yes.
But the parent can refuse though, right? But
Can the parent
can't-
refuse
the parent
remediation?
can refuse. We have to offer, correct?
I've not had a parent refuse remediation in reading or math before, ever. So it's a statutory requirement that we provide it, and we have to provide notices to parents throughout the MTSS process, letting parents know that their child does have a reading or math deficiency. So they do get multiple notices and updates. I have not heard of a parent refusing reading or math intervention because we are required to provide that.
So even in middle school, they haven't refused?
So, yeah.
And so here's what I'm thinking, in my teacher brain. You know, a middle school parent, a parent of a middle schooler says, I don't want my kid to miss whatever it is, if it's an elective or something else. And so they refuse or decline the assistance they get in reading or math. So it was just,
So we have had parents on a secondary level refuse, and we generally at the school have them sign something saying that the school is required to provide it. And as a parent, my refusal to receive these services could impact my students' graduation status, my students' success in the state assessments.
okay, how does that reflect on their BAM score? Like if the parent refuses to have their child be remediated and then come assessment time, they've not participated in any of the MTSS strategies or remediation courses.
In
What does-
secondary, those interventions are scheduled, and so the students, like the reading students, if a student refused that particular class, we see that sometimes when students move into the state of Florida and they don't have a previous test score, and so we try to use different metrics to place a student and determine their proficiency, but if a parent at that time just says, please give us a chance, and then the student will prove to you that they are proficient readers, we then allow that student not to be placed in that reading class, and so they would be in an English class. So that reading teacher would not have that student in that class. Did that answer your question, Ms. Conrad?
I'm not sure.
I think, I think what she's saying is for the English teacher's van, because the reading teacher is supposed to be supporting collectively the reading skills that would be reflective on the English test. And so, I don't mean to speak for you, but I think what she's saying is if the parent refuses to participate in the reading support class, then does that English teacher get some relief on their VAM score because the parent is electively deciding to not participate in the MTSS process that we've created?
No, ma'am.
So there's no exception?
Correct.
Okay, I'm just stating I don't agree with that.
It is.
That's
it is-
very unfair.
It is a rare situation, though, when the administrator is really able to speak with that parent and have a productive conversation to go over the graduation requirements and to show how important this assessment is, and then to show the value of the intensive reading classrooms, which is the remediation. We have very few parents that are adamant about removing that student from the class.
All right, thank you for that. And I ask because I've experienced situations like that, and it's detrimental, to the learning process. And, if we can't do it at school and we're not getting much assistance at home, then that puts us in a challenging position. So,
And that doesn't support the teacher either.
no, they're not going to support the teacher. Okay, thank you very much.
I think Dr. Bell might have had
Oh,
something to
sorry.
Well, I think it was covered, but to your point, Vice Chair Conrad, I agree. I mean, we are responsible for their academic learning. I am a huge proponent of a parental choice, but we are responsible for their learning, and it does have direct impact on our ability to provide the resources and support that we deem necessary statutorily and just ethically. It's what we need to do. So I just wanted to reiterate what Dr. Livingood said about, I think that's really up to the team to communicate and share, have a sit-down conversation with the families to help them understand why these programs are offered. And it's not just because it's in statute, because these are resources we have to help their child be successful. So I think it's the investment of the time. And in my experience, actually in all the cases I can think of, it led to a better understanding of what we're trying to do. The difficulty is in secondary when it does not allow for those elective courses and those courses of choice. And that, I think, is what you're getting to. That is why we're trying to offer as many programs and offerings. We need to intervene earlier. We need to work on those foundational courses we talk about all the time. Everybody outside calls it the basics. And we also need to offer more offerings so that when they have to take those classes, they still have the opportunity to take high-interest classes as well. That's what we're committed to doing. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
And I will say, Ms. Conrad, this was the page I was looking for, page 24 of the red line. We still have that statement that parents may not refuse remedial intervention services. That's statutorily based. What happened is I redlined that out just because it was redundant to have it twice.
All right, thank you very much.
But again, that's still a conversation. If a parent wants to refuse, we'd gladly have that conversation to talk through what our interventions do for the students. And we do regular data reviews to make sure that they are servicing our students as how they need it.
Okay, thank you. My next is a clarifying question, and this is on, it's under mathematics. I've got page 50. And so, under each subject area, it says each middle school student must earn 3 units of ELA, must earn 3 units of social studies, and for science too. But under math, it says they should earn. And I just wondered if there was an exception there, or if that was just missed.
There's not, yeah, it was an oversight we had in the committee.
Okay, so it will be 3 for every subject area, for all core subjects. Okay. 1 second. I'm sorry this is not more fluid. Okay, I just wondered if you could clarify for me, students with disabilities who are exempt from testing, what does that look like? And I just ask that from a point of clarification that all the accommodations that I've seen on the classroom end, what type of severity are we looking at, or what accommodations
So yeah, I have.
exempt a student from being tested?
I have the statement from statute here, and what I probably will do is I'll take that spot and make sure we directly reference the statute, but here's the statement. For purposes of this chapter, the term student with disability means students who documented with an intellectual disability, a hearing impairment, including deafness, a speech or language impairment, a visual impairment, including blindness, an emotional or behavioral disability, an orthopedic or other health impairment, an autism spectrum disorder, a traumatic brain injury, or a specified learning disability, including but not limited to dyslexia, dyscalculia, or developmental aphasia.
It's like everyone's.
Okay. It's
Not very broad.
very broad.
It is absolutely broad. And that's why we left this here, that the state ultimately determines what accommodations are allowed. And that's a regular conversation between our school admin and the state, and our district admin and the state.
Okay, do you know approximately, and you can get back to, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, I'm just trying to wrap my brain about what this looks like. How many students we have that are exempt from testing?
I don't know at the top of
Okay,
my head.
I'm just curious.
Totally assessed.
Yeah, we'll get back with you with the number of exempt and students who are alternatively
That
exempt.
would be wonderful.
Assessed, yeah, we can do that.
Thank you, and I do have a few more.
Okay.
I think on the slideshow it was 9 and 10. I have it in my notes as 54.
As you're finding that, Vice Chair Conrad, I'm remembering that I believe the cutoff is supposed to be 1%, that we should not have more than 1% of students be on an alternate assessment path. I could be wrong, but the intention is for students to be working towards a regular diploma starting from when they're very young, and to be very selective about putting kids on an alternate assessment path.
Yeah, I can't speak to the percentage, but yeah, that's absolutely, we attempt to have every student possible in our regular course of study.
Best, okay.
Yeah.
All right. My next question is just really an explanation for the change in language, which I don't know that you can provide, but on slide 9, when it says prohibited activities, the district school board shall prohibit each public school from suspending a regular program or curricula. Why is that? Do you know why that's placed under the school board? That's a school board decision?
Yeah, this was updated in the recent best assessment, fast assessment rollout. It previously was just like a blanket statement, you shouldn't stop instruction to test prep. This actually gives us a lot more avenues to be able to do it and integrate it within our course of study, but that's directly from the statute.
Okay, because I don't know if you can elaborate on, I'm trying to look, what was the word they use? In case you said. One second, sorry, I'm so sorry.
This one.
My suggestion on that would be to maybe add the statute number.
It might be in the document.
Might be. I'm just looking on the.
Okay, suspending. What does that look like? If we say we're suspending instruction, what does that look like for a teacher? What qualifies as suspending?
So they don't give clarification what suspending is. The way I've read it and we've interpreted it is that means you're essentially stopping your instructional day and doing standalone test prep things, potentially pulling students out of the classroom for specifically test prep. Now, this does allow for skills prep, which sounds, sounds like you're splitting hairs there, but skills prep there are things we know that are tested, that are skills and our benchmarks, which we are saying our students are learning in the class. You can still do those and you can still base it on diagnostic assessment or fast assessment, but what you can't do is stop the student day of learning for just specific test skills. And here it even says unless they are non-proficient. So if they scored a 1 or a 2 on the previous test, then you can pull them and suspend learning for test skills, but it can't be for the entire student body. It does not say anything about embedding those skills or that instruction into your instruction. It just says you can't suspend instruction for it.
Okay, I'm just going to state my opinion here. I don't like this at all. Coming from a teacher's standpoint, testing is not like it was when we were kids. And teaching some test strategies is extremely important, in my opinion, and also the test practice, because the testing questions are written so specifically that there is a lot of review, at least in, I would think in most grade levels, but in elementary schools where we worked through practice test questions during class time. If I was reviewing for my ELA test, in fact, I believe the district provided practiced tests. And so we would review them, they would have time to work on them at home, and then they would bring them back and we would go over them together so we could identify where our mistakes were. But that was during class time.
Yeah, and I think if you think of it as, for elementary, a 90-minute reading block, and it's 2 weeks before state testing, you wouldn't necessarily give up a 90-minute block of reading 3, 4, 5 days in a row to just do test prep. So you would do test prep in the context of the content that you're teaching. So if you're teaching a lesson on central idea, you can absolutely have test item type practice that go along with that benchmark. So it just wouldn't be necessarily in isolation, because how many 90-minute reading blocks can we afford to give up? We really can't. So we have to do it along with our instruction. So we're not abandoning test prep. We would do it within our instruction without suspending normal reading instruction, because we simply can't afford to do that. But we could do both simultaneously, or a teacher in small group could do something with item types that was aligned to the benchmark they were teaching. So we're not abandoning test prep altogether, because kids absolutely have to have that practice before we put a test in front of them. It's just mainly stating we can't just suspend our normal instruction to solely do test prep. There just has to be a balance.
I agree with that, and I'm not trying to split hairs with you. I'm just trying to be honest and have honest conversation about what it takes to get a third or a fourth grader ready for state, assessment test. And it's very challenging, and particularly the math piece of review is very overwhelming. To go over and review a year's worth of instruction, before their test. And so it may not take the hour, but it may take 30 minutes, and it may take 30 minutes for a week. And so, this is just challenging for me to accept, because in my opinion, that review is good teaching. Mm-hmm. It's part of being a good facilitator for your students. And so I'm just struggling with this piece, and I know that we have to move on, but I'm just letting you know this is something I struggle with as an educator, and I think it does a disservice to our students.
Vice Chair,
I did, on that note, if it's okay, I just have a clarifying question. Are we then not making every kid take the practice test on the platform?
Oh, that's still allowed in the statute, too.
Oh, so we're allowed to do their practice test?
Yes.
We're just not allowed to stop instruction to do other practice items?
Yeah, I mean,
Got it. So okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood what was being said.
Yeah.
So the state, just so we're all on the same page, the state is totally okay with us stopping instruction to do their practice test, which we have to document that we have given to every student. But they are not okay with us stopping instruction to do your own approach to make sure that you're meeting students' individual needs in your classroom.
or non-proficient students, yes.
Got it, okay. I was like, I wonder if the state's still making us stop instruction to do their practice test. Got it, okay.
And they even say the first thing you're allowed to do is distribute sample assessment books, which I don't know if those still exist in most subjects anymore, because it's all online.
Yeah,
It's state things can be distributed, but
of course. Understood. Thank you for that point of clarification.
Okay, I'm getting close. GPA of 2.0, I know that the board has discussed that, or it's staying,
For the student progression plan, it would stay, because that's a state, that again is determined by the state. But we are working with Dr. Gullett and Dr. Talbert on the athletic code of conduct, and that's where we have discussed the increasing the GPA. But that would not be a part of the student progression plan.
okay, perfect, thank you
Yes,
so
ma'am.
much. It was page 63 in the red line, makeup work, and I would like a definition for reasonable time limit. And
yeah,
I'm going to just share. I'm going to tell you
Go
where
ahead.
I'm coming from again. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I get a lot of parent phone calls, and the parent phone calls are upset because their children are not allowed to make up work, or they're given half credit. So when I read this, it really jumped out to me and like, okay, if I was a teacher, whenever the child came back, if they were sick or on vacation, whatever that looked like, I would say a week, depending on what was going on. But what does that look like? It gives, and I want our teachers to have discretion. I don't want to micromanage them, but I also feel like, what does that look like in reality? What is your vision for that reasonable time limit?
so yeah, it depends teacher by teacher, because if a student is out for 2 weeks, that could be a longer time period than if they missed one thing. We thought about taking the word reasonable out and just saying a time period at the teacher's, or a time period as determined by the teacher, but we don't have anything on the contract side that says this is the amount of time allowed.
So is that procedural by school? Like, does each school decide how long?
It can
student
be, not every
has-
school has a policy with that. I think is it in the code of conduct? Yeah.
I thought it was like
So-
every day you were out plus one.
One.
Isn't that what it is, if for sick?
And really, I just want to make sure all teachers are providing an opportunity to turn in missed work. So that's really what I want to get to.
Yeah, because that was the word reasonable, could be taken a lot of different ways, so.
I think maybe what Dr. James has shared is a good idea, to give an example of, if you're out 5 days, you get the 5 days plus, whatever. I just feel like there needs to be something more concrete, because I feel like we have people who are abusing this reasonable time.
Yeah, and we'll check and make sure it's aligned with what's in the Code of Student Conduct as well,
Okay.
but some clarification would be great there.
And I'll just weigh in on this a little bit. I see it from the other side, where older students have had ample opportunity, and then when it's go time, right there at the end of the quarter, they want to make up all of their work and get all of the credit. So I agree that some parameter around what's considered reasonable, the definition of reasonable, is important. I mean, after all, we're trying to mirror what they're going to be facing in society and building those habits.
And the code does say within 1 day for each absent, like Dr. James said. So, yeah, that's language we can borrow and make sure it's clear in both places.
Good, and I agree, and I think having that will help our teachers on that end, because I've also experienced that, where somebody comes in at the last day, and they have things from, 6 weeks ago that you're trying to hurry and grade. So I get that in support of our staff in that instance. Red line, page 112, this is a little in the weeds. But I felt like this topic had not come up, and so it fit here. Mr. Ingham, it's not really something for you to answer, but I did want to bring attention to it. So it talked about, on that page, you're talking about Title I and the support for our staff. And Dr. Gullett, I just wanted to share with you, when I visit schools, this is a number one complaint from our staff members, is the communication between the Title I department, getting answers to emails and phone calls about amendments, finances, and it's really disheartening because they have money they need to use, and they want it to go to their students, and they're not getting good communication. And even if that communication is, I'm sorry, I haven't heard from the state yet, I will get back to you. But right now, I have staff members that have pulled up strings of email, and there is no response from that department. And so I really would like to see an improvement in the communication from our Title I department.
Thank you, Vice Chair Conrad, and I've heard the same. I've had a conversation with Dr. Talbot Irving to look at that and address that. Yes, thank you for that. And it's an expectation that even if you don't have any information, here's where we are, here's the status, and here's when you can expect that.
Correct, because the expectation of a teacher is you respond to a parent in 24 hours. The expectation of an administrator is you respond to your teachers and your parents in 24 hours. And so I would certainly hope, unless there's extenuating circumstances, that our staff would get back to our administrators within 24 hours. So I appreciate that help. And my last and final thing, the last page on page 113, that first link did not work for me. It says, it takes you, does not exist, or whatever it says.
Yeah, I'll make sure it's updated.
Okay, all right. Mr. Ingram, thank you very much for your work in preparing this and presenting it to us, and thank you for helping me with my concerns. I appreciate you.
I appreciate the feedback, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Board Member James.
Just have two. On slide 15, we discussed the additional financial literacy and money management courses, and you mentioned that they were taking the place of the social studies at the high school level. The only blank in social studies at the high school level is freshman year, so I'm just led to assume then that we're going to be delivering this instruction freshman year. Is that correct?
No, we actually had a long discussion with this with our school principals, and they would still like to. If you look at the contents of the course, it's very practical money management stuff, and it goes like this with freshmen, a lot of them.
That was my concern, so that's why I brought this up.
So yeah, it's gonna, we didn't say as a district we're gonna do it all 11th or 12th grade, but it's something our counselors are gonna know to check on transcripts. But it's gonna be 11th or 12th grade primarily. And because it's an extra half credit, it's going to have to be kind of squeezed in with an elective.
Okay, so we're going to be taking away a half-credit elective for juniors or seniors to be able to make this happen?
Potentially, yeah.
Okay, and then, is there not a way then to load up something differently in the freshman year to move that load off of juniors and seniors? Like, is there not a way to shift? I mean, I know, like, for instance, econ and government are a senior elective right now, or I mean, a senior social studies, and it's 2 semesters. Is there not a way to shift everything down one so that freshman gets world history, sophomores get American history, and then we do US government in junior year, so then we could do this money management in senior year?
We haven't made a district call on that, but the schools are at least going to attempt some of those things. It just depends on if their teacher's course is more geared to juniors and seniors, they may not necessarily want to do that with freshmen, because that does create a big shift, but we haven't even made necessarily those decisions for next year because it just applies to this year's freshmen going forward.
Okay, yes. I mean, I from my seat and having been at the high school level, I would love to see just an entire shift, especially if this is taking the void of that social studies. We have that only 3 social studies credits, basically. So for me, I would love to see this take place for a stakeholder and not take away from an elective opportunity for our upperclassmen, who may very well be super engaged in what their technical education path is going to look like, and then we're potentially taking away a half-credit opportunity for that technical education engagement because they need to fulfill this requirement when there was a whole void. They basically get 3 electives freshman year when they presumably have no idea what they want to do. So I would love to see a social studies shift forward so that doesn't take away from that elective opportunity senior year.
Yeah, I'll add to that. We're seeing more and more of our students also change that hope from a face-to-face course to an online. So that does allow for extra classes. So like that world history that you're referring to could be moved to 9th grade. And so Mr. Ingram he had a huge committee and they met with the principals to really work through all of these different progressions because as you know, our advanced students and our some of our IB and Cambridge students, they already do world history in 9th grade. And so it's an easy shift, but it's also working itself out because of our HOPE students taking a lot of this online through our 8th grade summer school options that we have and through the summer before their 9th grade year.
Okay, cool.
So-
I just wanted to share those thoughts as we plan forward.
Yeah. The progression is definitely changing every year because students are taking more and more rigorous courses earlier, and so we're keeping pace with that. So those are good points.
So then my only other point is on slide 21 where we talk about the collegiate academy and dual enrollment students. So we changed the value for GPA starting with this year's 6th graders, right? And so as it exists right now, a dual enrollment A is valued at 5, right?
A dual enrollment A is valued at a full point.
4?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, at a 5.
5, a 5-point scale.
Yeah.
And then for the 6th graders, as they rise forward, what will a dual enrollment full weight A be? Is it 6 or to 5.5?
It is still going to be 5. It's just that an advanced course that's not at a college level has got to be a 0.5.
A 4.5?
Yes.
Okay. So this is my question. I was a high school AA student, so I'm just going to be honest, this is a personal thing. I was ranked number 10 when I graduated, and I had a high school AA degree. And I was not an all-A college AA student, but I had a lot of A's, and those A's carried, in Orange County, an A carried a 6.0 weight at community college, AP, IB, or I don't know that ACE was around then. But I think that not allowing those students, and I was not a Val-Sal candidate. My sister was because she got all A's all of the time, and she was a high school AA student too. I think that not allowing high school AA students to be candidates for Val-Sal discredits the work that they are doing, which one could argue, while maybe is not as challenging, is more work than the IB or ACE loaded courses, because they have taken more and completed more coursework at community college than the AP, IB, ACE track. And so I don't agree with discrediting their ability to be a Val-Sal completer. their guidance counselor is still able to get their grades from community college. They still can get their transcripts. All of those things can still occur. So I'm not in agreement with discrediting them the opportunity to be Val-Sal.
Yes, it's not about the AA diploma, it's not the AA course, it's the, and this is a conversation we had with CF at the beginning of this implementation. It's about the students not being on campus. And that has always been our position, that any student that is a Val and Sal candidate, they need to represent their student body class. So they need to be part of that student body group. And that's the reason that they're not candidates. It's not the AA courses, because we have plenty of students that if they were on campus full-time, they would be eligible for that with an AA diploma.
So then I think then there's a clarifying word that's needed in here, because I certainly read it not in that fashion.
Okay.
So how many periods a day do I need to be on my high school campus to be a Val-Sal candidate?
So that's a good point, and we've always wrestled with that, because in the past, if a student had 4 periods, let's say on a traditional 6-period day, if the student had 4 periods at the base school, and then they went to CF for 2 classes, that would still be a representation of the base school. So that student would still be eligible because they were a part of the school day. So when we look at participation, I think the rule of thumb is half of your day needs to be taking courses, if they're available, at your base school.
So I think that needs to be put in here, because the vagueness of that I am not okay with. And it being left to the interpretation of the guidance counselor or the APC at that school site deciding what presence on your campus means is not, because my senior year, I still went to Apopka High School 3 or 4 periods a day, and then I had OJT, and I left, and I went and did dual enrollment. So I still was very present on my campus, but I also did the others. I totally agree with, if you are a full-time dual enrollment student and you are not stepping foot on your campus, sure, you can walk across the stage, but you are not a representation of your school campus. So having a middle ground, I'm totally on board with, but that needs to be articulated, in my opinion, in black and white, so that there is not room for certain people to interpret it certain ways.
We'll make that clarification, sorry.
Yeah, we'll make that clarification, and because that Collegiate Academy is its own special program, they will be completers within that and be recognized within that too, as a separate program from their normal school.
But if I'm a Collegiate Academy participant, am I not coming to my base school at all?
Generally, no. You're going to be full-time dual enrolled.
Okay, I think that then there needs to be a definition for Collegiate Academy, because Collegiate Academy is like full-time dual enrollment, which is not, and this is a newer term for our community, but dual enrollment and Collegiate Academy are potentially 2 separate pathways forward to doing the same thing, because you can become a high school AA student without being a full-time dual enrollment student. With summer
dual enrollment, course-by-course dual enrollment, yeah.
Yes, because you can do summer and all of the things. And so I just think this is really like muddy, and I would prefer it to be a little bit more clear about what each piece is and what each piece will get you. Because I don't want someone to have a confusion about what they're going to be eligible for and representation on that stage. Because for some, being Val and Sal is a very important thing, and I wouldn't want a student to be confused and then come to us and we're looking at something and it's not very clear, and it's harder for us to support the work of staff because it's not really very clear.
Yes, Dr. Hembrook and I just worked with CF to complete the articulation agreement with CF, and we were real purposeful on how we defined the difference between traditional dual enrollment and the Collegiate Academy. So we'll make sure that this language is in alignment with that articulation agreement language for sure. Thank you for that feedback.
Okay, those were just my only 2 questions, so thank you for that. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member James.
Yeah, thank you. Just to reiterate, great points. Thank you for the feedback. Agree. Collegiate Academy is new and it's distinctly different than the other program offerings. I think the we need to be clear on what that looks like. And it's still a work in progress right now, right? As you just described, the articulation agreement, but we'll make sure that that's very clear because and I also want to go back to something you said about not stepping foot on campus. To clarify that that's junior, senior year, not their first 2 years at all, right? So I didn't hear that. I just want to make sure that we're clear about that. It doesn't mean that they're not there their entirety of their high school program. It's those last 2 years. So I didn't hear that. I just want to make sure that's also very unique and different. The last 2 years are different. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board? You're good?
I don't have any additional comments. I'm just grateful for the work that you all have put in. This is one of two, I guess. Is that correct, that you all, if we need it? Okay. So as we see those things cleaned up that have been discussed today, then I don't know if we actually have to have another work session about them unless you just want to bring just a couple of those handful of items. But thank you for the work, and thanks to board members who this is your subject area of expertise. I'm grateful for you as well.
Same.
Awesome. Yeah, so you can bring it back in an update, whatever format it works best.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to ask that too, just for clarification, as we have a lot of these, items that are one of two, or perhaps if needed. So if I don't hear from the board, I'm hearing that we don't need to bring it back. We'll just provide some updates in some form or fashion of what has been shared today. Is that acceptable?
That would be my hope. I do have a couple things
okay.
quickly. All about this Val-Sal, I'm thinking that, again, hearing, in the end, it's the school board members that hear it right before graduation, and we want to avoid that. And I'm almost thinking in terms of a flow chart that a parent would get early. If you're on this path, Val-Sal, not Val-Sal, and I don't know how direct we could make it, but the more direct, the better, probably. For families. And then as far as the personal finance and money management, I really hope that there are ways that we can be threading that in very early. I would love to see it start getting threaded in middle school, honestly. There are 2-year-olds saying to their parents, well, can't you use your credit card? That's the reality of today's kids. And they do need to start learning from a very young age about personal finance and money management. And I know there's just not enough hours in a day, but that is the traditional, I still hear from a lot of citizens, are we still teaching kids how to balance a checkbook? And I'm like, yeah, we are, plus debit cards and all of those things. So it is something that the community is asking about.
And that's something we're working on, yeah.
Okay, all right, very good. I really appreciate that. Yes.
Thank you for bringing that up because I just pulled the valedictorian, salutatorian section of this. So thank you for bringing that up about like the flow chart or what have you, because I remember even my own child going in, the guidance counselor saying, well, if they take their foreign language through Marion Virtual, then they're not a candidate. That's not in here anywhere. And
it's through implication, essentially.
Okay.
You earn bonus points through taking advanced courses or collegiate courses, essentially. And if you're taking Marion Virtual, you're taking the non-advanced version of Spanish. So it's not removing your candidacy. It's just when your peers are taking the advanced version and you're taking the traditional version, you're not going to keep up as far as the bonus points.
And so again, a flow chart might be helpful because that was a face-to-face verbal conversation that not all parents may know as their student comes in as a freshman, because they may be thinking, well, we can get your language out of the way. You can actually be taking X number of classes extra and not understanding that it actually will harm them in the end. Anyway,
To your point, I think even beyond a flow chart, if it was an if-then, if you do this, then you're going to get this kind of deal. And that probably I'm sure one of our amazing high school guidance counselors has something like this. But I think if there was some kind of like if-then progression based on people who would like to accelerate, just so they understand the implications of that, I think that might be helpful, because she's not wrong. Like, some parents are like, let's just do your Spanish 1 online this summer so you can get ahead. Well, then you're going to have to take another full weighted course to get the number of points you need to be a Val candidate. So And it's
Yeah, our high
really-
school counselors are ahead of a lot of these things.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean we couldn't create a guiding document so that parents can have that too.
Well, or just duplicate what one of the guidance counselors already has so that everyone is using the same document. Yeah.
Well, and to that point, though, that parents potentially are doing that without guidance counselor involvement and input. So the more parents can also be empowered in figuring some of that out, as helpful as it could be. So, thank you.
Great.
I always recommend a thermographic heat map, you know that, but, you know.
Well, this makes me think, is there a, how to become a valedictorian handout?
At
Like-
a district level, not that I know.
Valedictorian.
So I would say that it would be almost handy for sixth grade, because that's now the year that we're basically starting the track to valedictorian, which I personally am completely in disagreement with. I wholeheartedly disagree with this acceleration and sixth graders taking geometry basically, but here we are. So if there was a handout that advanced sixth graders who are in those, because it's basically that math course, right? That sixth grade math course they're scheduled for, which puts them on that track.
They could be on the track to take Algebra 1 and Geometry before the end of middle school.
Yes.
As soon as anybody starts taking any high school credits, they're technically building their resume for Val and Sal.
So what I guess maybe I'm asking for is a how to become valedictorian, little flow chart, if-then statement that would be given to middle school parents of kids enrolled in coursework so that we know that we are effectively communicating what they have to do to become a valedictorian.
Yeah, and we could create that and just distribute it to all students in a high school course in middle school.
Yes, that's what I mean. Every student who their first time they're enrolled in a high school course gets this flow chart of sorts of how to get to say the speech on the last day.
But that would be a kid that's moving from 5th grade to 6th grade, correct?
So the earliest you can start a high school, it's 7th grade. To 7th grade, it's 6th grade.
We have a fourth grader right now that just completed 2 Spanish high school courses through virtual school. So it's earlier and earlier, but our guidance counselors have to approve the Marion virtual courses, even if a parent has assisted the child in registering. So we'll make sure that we do create a document, and we'll make sure our counselors are aware of that when they are approving these incredibly eager students taking the rigorous.
Well, and I'm not trying to create more work for you guys, but I think the calls we get is I didn't know. And it's always easier for me to say, well, my understanding is you should have received a document upon your first, and I realize we're going to kind of start from the beginning now and work forward because there's lots of horses out of the gate already because we have tons of students who have already accelerated. But it would give me peace of mind to know that we are communicating very effectively what the progression would look like.
And I agree with that, Dr. James. I think that potentially when that document should be distributed would be 5th graders touring their middle school. Because if a student arrives in 6th grade and they don't have the schedule that puts them in advanced math, yet they have whatever. I mean, there could be whatever reason that schedule did not meet what that progression plan says, then the parent can come first week of school and say, time out, we got this Val-Sal thing, we're starting this pathway. And then that gets the schedule fixed and all the things that can happen in the first week of school of their 6th grade year. Because if that's essentially when we're starting the 7th grade acceleration math, that then puts them in algebra, that then puts it in whatever else they want to take. Because they can be taking English 1, their 8th grade year. And so all the things, they need to have that sit down with their guidance counselor. But if that document is distributed when they're doing their tours of the middle school as a 5th grader, I think that's most appropriate. Because there are families that are planning, and the better prepared we can give them the documentation on how they actually can make that work, go for it. More power to them. I'm glad I wasn't.
Dr. Gallagher?
Thank you. I feel the need to add a little context. I don't disagree with anything that's been said, but everything's not just about valedictorian, salutatorian. And I think that context of information provided is not incorrect, and I think it's important. However, the other part of that story is helping students understand what are your goals if you want to seek a top 20 school, if you want to go, on a different pathway, what it is you need to reach that. Because in some schools, it's not just about the Val-Sal, it's about ranking, it's about the rigorous courses, it's about all those other components that's highly complicated. And I agree, our families don't always know that, don't know how to navigate that. So I just want to provide a little bit broader context to what are your goals? Where do you want to go? And then how do I help you get there? If your goal is valedictorian, and I've supported a student who that's her goal, how do I help you get there? And another student is, that's not my goal, but here's where I want to go, and these are my choices. We want to help them to navigate the context of their decision-making early. I agree with that, because fortunately or unfortunately, it starts very early, so that they can seek the pathway of those programs. If they want to go into engineering and they want to get through all of those classes, that does start early. And a lot of times our families and our students don't know that. But just, again, I want to step out and back and just broader context. All those pieces need to come together to help them navigate the ability to choose wisely and have access to those courses and programs and support that they need. So, and thank you to the team. I know you guys are already working on so many of these pieces that we're navigating that have been added to the curriculum, and then helping our students have the information that they need to be successful.
Great umbrella point, Dr. Gullett, and what I just wrote down was defining the pathways. You know, we got into big conversation about, valedictorian and salutatorian, because that's what we hear about. But you're absolutely right. You know, we are creating so many pathways as part of our strategic plan. And it is incredible to think that we have to start defining that as early as late elementary school, for a variety of goals that a student may have that are just encompassed within some of the points we've been talking about. So yes, it's big stuff and big work, and thank you. Worth it.
It's a great problem to have.
It is. It is. What are we going to do with all these smart kids? And motivated kids, and kids that just want to do all kinds of things. So, and just helping them define it and help the parents understand it. We're on a great path forward for that. Anything else from the board? All right. I think we've done it. Should we take a quick break before we roll into code of student conduct? Oh, yes, we'll do the public comment too. Is there any public comment? All right, hearing none. Let's be realistic. I don't know that we can do it in 5 minutes, but we'll take 10. Okay, we will take a quick break, and we're recessing at 10:05. Thank you. All right.
Because this won't be long, too.
We are back in 10:15 and moving on to our next item in our work session. Dr. Gullett.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Actually, Dr. Hembrook is going to come forward, and she's going to kick off the presentation and then discussion board with the recommendations for revisions to the Code of Student Conduct. So thank you, Dr. Hembrook.
Good morning, Chair Thrower, board members, and Superintendent Gullett. Every year, the Student Discipline Department works collaboratively with various stakeholders to review and, if necessary, propose revisions to the Code of Student Conduct. Today, our department will share the process that we took, as well as the committee representation and suggestions for the 24-25 Code of Student Conduct. I'm honored to introduce Misty Gwynn, the coordinator of student discipline, who will provide you with the overview and information.
Thank you. Morning again, Ms. Gwynn.
Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Hembrook. I have worked under the leadership of Dr. Hembrook with our committee to present to you this morning the recommended revisions for the 24-25 Code of Student Conduct. I will start with sharing some information about our committee. The Code of Student Conduct Review Committee met both virtually and in person to review each section of the Code of Student Conduct. The committee included board member Dr. James from District 5, community members, school-based and district representatives from mental health and wellness, exceptional student education, and student discipline, and we worked alongside the Marion Education Association and parent representatives. The goal of the committee was to allow the opportunity for stakeholders to provide input into the review of policies and the update of procedures, while enhancing the alignment of violations by further clarifying infractions and definitions within the glossary. I'm going to start by reviewing some revisions to incident codes. The pages that are mentioned on the PowerPoint are from the red line copy that was also provided to you. Currently, the Level 1 dress code violation outlines specific details about saggy pants. These details were added into our Code of Student Conduct after a city ordinance was passed that issued fines for the violation. This ordinance has since been repealed. The state statute ensures that we adopt a policy that prohibits students from wearing clothes that exposes underwear, which is already detailed within our Code of Student Conduct. We are suggesting the removal of the specific progressive discipline outlined for saggy pants, as each dress code violation should be enforced and progressed the same. Next, the Level 1 infraction code for over-the-counter medication. There is a Florida state statute now allows students to possess and use medication to relieve headaches while at school without a doctor's order or prescription, as long as the medication is regulated by the FDA. We are working with staff attorney to determine if we can require parents to complete an authorization form. As a committee, our goal is to ensure that students fully understand the appropriate methods, the frequency of use, the responsibility of not sharing that medication, and the consequences of misuse. We have added the words excluding headache medication to the code descriptor. Next, a new Level 2 incident code is needed to address inappropriate exposure that is not of a sexual nature. The current Code of Student Conduct outlines exposure as an automatic Level 3 sexual offense. The addition of this Level 2 offense will allow for an opportunity of intervention and progressive discipline prior to receiving a Level 3 sexual offense infraction. We currently have 2 Level 4 drug offenses. One of the Level 4 drug offenses outlines repeated drug offenses and students that provide drugs to other students. This infraction coding is currently 4EE. An additional Level 4 offense that we currently have is for the sale or the intent to sell drugs, and this infraction code is 4E. We are proposing that the first code be reserved for repeated drug offenses only, while the second Level 4 drug offense be utilized for providing, selling, or the intent to sell. This would allow for a more progressive discipline approach for those that are providing or selling drugs on our campuses, and allow the disaggregation of data to know how many of our drug offenses are repeated offenses versus how many of our drug offenses are providing or selling. I'm going to move now into the revisions of definitions within our Code of Conduct. These are located in the glossary of the red line. Behavior contracts have not shown as an effective intervention for changing behavior. A contract must be layered with intervention, replacement behaviors, and parent notification and involvement. The glossary will include the requirements for both a school-based contract and a district-based behavior contract. The school-based contract will serve as a progressive step prior to initiating a district behavior contract when appropriate. Violation of a district contract would result in a level 3 infraction. The definitions of both of those are outlined in the glossary. District behavior contract examples might be an early reentry, a removal of bus rider privileges, out of area, repeated misconduct, or supportive enforcement. The level 2 infraction for contraband currently covers possession, use, and distribution of contraband items. The update would allow our base schools to intervene when students are selling items on campus that are not typically considered contraband. The goal is to eliminate the sale of any items on campus due to the increased number of items that appear to be harmless but contain THC. We currently have 2 level 4 codes that address both false accusations and providing false information on an MCPS employee. We are requesting to remove one of the level 4 definitions, the level 4 false accusation code, and we are going to add the word accusation into the other level 4 code. The definition would read providing false information or an accusation against an employee. Combining the 2 offenses while including both terms are sufficient and cover the needs of both. The difference between the level 3 and the level 4 providing false information on an MCPS employee would be determined by it involving a school-based investigation versus a district or law enforcement investigation. Continuing on with updates to definitions. Currently, possession of adult or sexually explicit printed materials and pictures is provided as an example of a level 1 offense under inappropriate language, gestures, and materials. These materials are addressed within the definitions of level 2, and sexually explicit materials are not appropriate as a level 1 offense, and we are requesting that example be removed. We currently have a level 2 and a level 3 physical attack incident. Some specific indicators are needed to discern between the 2 levels and to ensure the calibration of coding of these infractions. A level 2 physical attack is a one-sided act of physical aggression that causes no injury, while a level 3 physical attack is a one-sided, intentional, targeted act of physical aggression causing no injury or choking and strangulation that creates a risk to health or safety. By adding the terminology intentional and targeted to the level 3 definition, it would raise the physical attack from the level 2 to the level 3. Furthermore, we're asking to update the coding indicator for level 3 physical attack. Currently, it says strangulation/choking/physical attack. That verbiage is included within the definition and doesn't need to be included on the descriptor. We are asking to change that incident code to just say physical attack level 3. Within the fighting definitions on page 56 of the red line, a clause about intervention has been added to discourage the use of student intervention during a fight and outlines the prohibited actions if a student does choose to intervene. For example, intervention cannot include violent actions. This section also mentions referencing the definition of self-defense, which you will see an updated definition to on the next slide. The level 2 fighting definition is going to remove the words "or more" so that level 2 fight is reserved for only a one-on-one fight. We will now look at the fighting level 3 and 4 definitions. The committee has discussed the need for clarifying indicators between level 3 and level 4. The definitions will outline more specific indicators of a fight as it relates to the significance of an injury that occurred, the culpability and origin or violence of the fight, the need for either verbal or physical intervention from staff, a student continuing to fight after the other combatant has surrendered, or joining a fight already in progress. These clarifying indicators will allow for more standardized coding of incidents across schools while providing more details that will be used to teach students and stakeholders about each specific infraction. Moving on to the definition of self-defense. The self-defense definition was new in our Code of Conduct this year, and it has provided our base schools the ability to review each situation individually when determining if an action was in self-defense. Adding details about the duty to retreat include that if given the opportunity, a student has the responsibility to leave any situation prior to the physical aggression for it to be considered self-defense. Additionally, the updated definition explains that if a student must use self-defense, it is their responsibility to only use the force necessary and leave the situation once it is safe to do so. There has been an increase in threats made against students, staff members, and campuses. Due to the vast difference in threats that are happening, it's important to capture the specific details of each threat when determining the coding level. The Florida Threat Assessment captures important details that should be used when determining the egregiousness of a threat. By adding the words typically resulting in a medium or high level threat, it encourages the use of the information from the threat assessment for base schools to determine the coding of a threat. The added wording would still allow for a zero tolerance policy to be utilized when needing to alternatively place or expel a student due to a threat of harm. Our last definitions. The level 4 sexual offense currently uses the terminology consensual sexual activity. Due to underage students not being able to provide consent, the verbiage would best be considered as mutual. And last, for definitions, the level 3 violation of school and safety procedure definitions needs to add an updated example of allowing access to any person onto campus through any means other than the single point entry. This happens when our students are popping gates and allowing students to enter campus through a side gate and not checking in through the front office, and that creates a safety risk for an entire campus. We have had several situations of that this school year. And lastly, a couple of additions that we are adding. Starting with felony transfer, we currently have a 6-step process outlined in our Code of Conduct. This would add an additional 2 steps. The first step would put the responsibility on the parent or the student to provide us any documentation of a charge that has been dropped or downgraded that could result in the student returning to base. And this also adds the last procedure of a committee that is going to review all of our felony transfer students on a regular basis in determining when it is appropriate for them to return to school. And lastly, the last edition outlines the right for parents to review campus video of an incident in which their child has been accused of a violation of the Code of Student Conduct, and would be located within the Student and Parent Rights and Responsibilities Section 3. The procedure details the need to schedule an appointment with the base school, sets a time limit from the day of the incident, and only allows the parent the right to review footage that is in question.
Could you say that again? The end part, I didn't hear it.
The last one? That they can only review footage that is in question. That is the last of the things that I have for you.
Thank you so much. Thank you both. And to the team again, for everyone who's been involved in this process. And so board, we look forward to your comments and questions.
Thank you, Dr. Gullett. Would you like to lead us off, Dr. Campbell?
Sure, why not? The slide that I would like to reference is slide 7. So, trying to decide how much I want to ask about this. So I see that the inappropriate language, gestures, and materials was a level 1, and we removed the possession of adult or sexually explicit printed materials or pictures out of page 56, and we moved, or essentially we're saying it's being covered under 58. Here's my concern. This is an opinion, so bear with me as I go down this pathway a bit. I would believe that gestures and language and that sort of thing should be considered separately from distribution of materials. And I'm actually going to use AI right now with how smart our students are. And I had an actual email received, I'm not sure if it was from someone in the district or outside of the district, referencing a case recently in New York where students used AI to put student faces on pornographic images and distributed them. And if we are lumping language, profane, obscene, and abusive language and gestures in the same category as material distribution, I completely disagree with that being a level 2 offense. And I would recommend that we pull out sexual material distribution, because that's different than cyberbullying, because if they don't actually send it to the person they're creating this image of, then, we might not necessarily have cyberbullying happening. But to consider that as just being a level 2 offense, this board member would say distribution of sexually explicit material that potentially even has our student and or employee faces on it absolutely is an expellable offense. And right now, I don't see that covered anywhere else here, and maybe I'm wrong.
And I think if we look at the red line on page 54, it's kind of indicated under the electronic telecommunication device misuse. I think we could expand that definition a little bit that would cover those topics that you're discussing. We have had instances of that happen this year, and it was coded under that electronic telecommunication device misuse.
I'm sorry,
Which is
can I
a level
pause? What
3.
page are you referring to?
54 on the
Thank
red
you.
line.
Thank you.
Is it cyber? Electronic, okay.
Which
And-
level, then, would that be?
That'd be a level 3.
And I understand that. I honestly think that it should be its own separate offense.
Okay.
This is an opinion, certainly, and that's kind of what we're sharing right now as board members. I think there's a bit of a difference in electronic device misuse. I understand it's unauthorized audio, video, or photographs, but again, when we're talking AI, it may not be a real photograph. And so how are we interpreting that, and how is the parent going to interpret that if it's a created image versus something that's real? And so I think that we need to get real careful on how we, I don't see that personally as a level 3 even. I see this and the potential for this, especially with the shame, disgraceful nature of what that even potentially is, other students involved, other faculty involved, whatever that looks like, that's an expellable offense and shouldn't just result in removal of the student for temporary reasons.
I agree with you completely. I mean, if someone created a pornographic picture of my daughter and distributed it, they should be expelled from school. And or as a teacher, if they created a pornographic image of myself and distributed it as an educator, I would say I fully support them being expelled from school. So if that's not reflective in here, which it's kind of vague, I would agree, it's kind of vague for this electronic. I'm completely on board with Dr. Campbell.
I am too. And this is, we're now confronting AI and navigating with it. And personally, I think we need to consider having that those two letters, AI, and threaded in here now, because it is just so, and the potential for it is amazing in so many ways, and the potential for damage in our business is horrendous.
I agree. There is also, and I'm hearing that we should have an additional code, and I'm not in disagreement. There is a level 4 of that same electronic telecommunication that involves unclothed private parts, all the things. So I think I can combine some things, but create our own code to address those topics.
Right. Thank you, Board, for hearing me out on that. I do, even with our electronic communication device misuse, oftentimes people equate that to being a phone, and that's potentially, I know you're smiling because you and I both know what the scenario I'm talking about, but I think it's up to this board to actually put real specific language about this is profane, obscene imagery that should be a level 4 offense, separate and apart from how it's distributed.
Yes, ma'am.
Because it's possible that it was created and then they printed it. Okay, then it doesn't fall under electronic anymore. And so maybe it's being actual prints that are handed out. Who knows how, and again, that could be AI generated that we have prints and it doesn't fall under this any longer, so.
You can just add the language image, likeness, or representation instead of photograph.
Could you say that again?
You can just add the language image, likeness, or representation.
Got it.
Like NIL.
If you chose, you could say audio or visual representation, but that's just a suggestion.
Is there a legal way to also actually put in the words AI so that it is definite?
Generated, I mean, it doesn't.
It doesn't, well, the distinction I would want to make is AI is really no different from what if a student decides they're going to draw out a cartoon, or they're going to draw an art piece or an image that has a pornographic representation.
Or just cut out the face from a
So,
picture and glue
right.
it on, I mean.
So regardless of the means, whether it's cut and paste, or whether it's physical digital on a computer, or whether it's, drawing, those are all, I don't think there needs to be an exception carved out for AI. We can simply go with any image, likeness, or representation. You can say electronic or otherwise.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that at all. It's just that AI is really coming to the forefront now. And again, I just don't want there to be any confusion of where we stand with that. So that's my concern.
Maybe just, could we say like, i.e. use of AI, like, just put a little example, because I don't disagree with Chair Thrower that like, sometimes being the most explicit gives us the most leverage, because then we have covered all of our bases and we're not leaving room for.
When you express one thing, though, you do create a category, so you have to make sure to say, but not including but not limited to, because otherwise it's only things that are within a particular category.
Right. Yep.
Madam Chair, if I may, just relatedly listening to the conversation about artificial intelligence, our school and district team are working very hard on bringing some language for a proposal to the board, because this is something that is it's an issue that we're all going to have to address. And so they're working on some language as a possible proposed policy that for board consideration, but they're working on that right now.
You're reading my mind, Dr. Gullett. And that was going to be my next ask, as a step further,
They're already on it. Yeah, they've been on it.
getting to work on it, because there's just so many benefits to it, but again, so many horrendous implications.
Chair, the only other comment that I had, and I'm grateful for a lot of things here that feel like we are, some of these additions that we put in last year, and we're clarifying them even further, and so there has been a lot of good work here. I find it interesting, but also appropriate that we are now adding sale of drink and food in the contraband category. There's actually even a commercial I saw just the other day, like cafeteria workers limiting the amount of ketchup that you have. So then there's like this ring of students passing Heinz ketchup packets under the table because so it's actually even being promoted. So I find that to be interesting and unique and appropriate as well. So I'm certain that it's happening very prevalently across our campuses. That would be one that I think students will need an education on not just quickly passing through your first day of school, here's your little snippet, because half the time they're not paying attention to all of this, but that's one that I could see a lot of students getting in trouble for, that they don't even realize we're about to make it wrong, so.
Yes, and we've had more situations come up where a student buys Sour Patch Kids from another student, thinking it's candy. It ends up being THC. They are then under the influence. So selling and getting items from other students just needs to be prohibited.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you, Board Member Campbell. That was great. Any other comments, questions?
Sure, I'll go.
Go ahead, Vice Chair.
I just have a couple things. Most of my notes are, I'm just really thankful for the time and energy and effort that went into specifying a lot of these different things. When we see you early in the morning at 7, a lot of these were splitting hairs and trying to find exactly where the offense fits in. And so there was a lot of work done to get very specific. So thank you very much. I know there was a lot of time that went into it. I just have a quick question. On page 35, on the substance abuse consequences, and actually I think it's on a few other pages, and I'm guessing it's just for cleanup, but mandatory is struck out on all of the consequences. Was that just to clean it up? And I just ask because when I read it, mandatory expulsion seems just more firm, unwavering, and so I just wondered what the discussion was on that.
Yes, there's always situations that arise with particular students that are situations where a recommendation for alt placement or expulsion is just not the appropriate consequence, and ultimately the Bay School principal has the ability to decide what infractions or what situation they would recommend alt placement or expulsion for. So removing that mandatory word, there will be a discipline matrix that is created, that there will be some offenses that do require, for example, sexual battery will always be a mandatory placement.
All right, thank you for that.
Yep.
My other question was, there was some discussion earlier on about this is not distributed in print anymore. Is that still the case?
That is currently the case. We have had lots of discussion with appropriate ways of getting this information out. And I'm not sure printing is the way to go, but the current way I don't feel was sufficient, and we are working with our committee to see exactly how we're going to address that.
Okay, and I asked because going through some of the things that you went through, like with the gummies, the food, I just think some of these things are conversations we should have in class, with your homeroom teacher. Self-defense, that was another one that I think, you just read over. But until there's a conversation and examples, given, what does that look like for an 8th grade boy?
We are currently working, my team has paired with Bellevue High School, and we're working on creating Nearpods that will be distributed that cover all of these hot topics, include videos and examples and pictures at both the elementary and secondary level. And that will be for beginning of the year introduction, it will be for students that are returning to base, it will be winter break return, all of those things will be covered within those Nearpods.
Okay, and so can you explain that a little bit to me? I'm not super familiar.
Yeah, it's a platform that the students will have access to that will review these topics, and it can be either synchronous or asynchronous where the teacher is going through it or the students can go through it alone. So our hope would be teachers are facilitating it first, but then it can be reviewed as frequently as needed for individual students.
Okay, I would love to see kind of some topics highlighted per grade, per elementary school, middle school, or high school, which of course some of them will overlap. But I would love for us to give a highly suggested, we in elementary school would like you to hit these 6 all together, in class, so every single student sees it, has eyes on it. In middle school, we have these 7 things. Maybe it's something we incorporate in the half-day program. I I don't know, I would really like to see is, when we look at what's coming before us, the issues that are making it to the board, are a lot of what you've covered today. And so I would just like to make sure that we're helping our students make good decisions as best we can. So thank you again for your work on this. It's phenomenal.
Madam Chair, may I jump in on that? Thank you. Vice Chair Conrad, that just prompted something. I think that's a terrific idea and great feedback, because if we can provide some guidance, it could be aligned with the data that we see. And sometimes people that are, just working so hard every day, they don't see the bigger picture and don't know the data points and the patterns that we see and talk about every single week of the increases in fighting and language and those kinds of things, and drug, alcohol issues. So I think that can hear the patterns and trends, and then hear some guidance to help to prevent these things from occurring. Because I have this conversation with the team all the time, and including Mr. McFadden, who I know is here, about prevention, and people just don't know. And I think so many of our students just don't know those choices and the absolute impact and consequences that can result. And things are different now, so we have to really be proactive and trying to mitigate that, but addressing that with the patterns, with guidance, may be helpful for our teachers and our staff. Thank you for that suggestion.
Yes, I'd like to share on that quickly, too. I love the idea, and Nearpod, great. I'm also thinking about, we've seen the value of student voice up here on the dais. We know that kids tend to listen to other kids. And it would be pretty interesting, I know elementary schools have morning shows, and high schools are doing all kinds of creative things with kids, but like a top 3 to 5 things, snippets from the Code of Student Conduct. This is self-defense, not self-defense. In a WWE clip or something, I don't know, but, make it engaging and kids telling the stories. Same thing with the candy.
My team is smiling because I've brought this up so many times. Mr. Christian and I identified even in the Student Media Festival, there's one we can use right there. And I've asked for the team to put together, students need to hear from students. And for some that have learned, sometimes the hard way, but student voice, I agree, Chair Thrower, is so important. So that's already underway. There are already videos that have been made that are out there. I've been asking for, I need to see the data on how often they're being shown. So, and then also the creation of additional videos. We did identify one just recently in the Student Media Festival, and then some others of trying to provide the students to be in front of the students, and not just our high schools. My ask is not just high schools, so our other levels, and maybe I even floated, maybe there's a nice little competition that students can engage. We have very talented students, so let them get out of their way. Just let them come up with some new products and get out of their way. Thank you.
I know there's consent, issues and all of that, but, some of these things could be texted even to parents, and then they can show them to their kids. All of those mediums of how do we really reach, because kids do tend to glaze over, when the announcements come on TV. So they're gonna have to be captured and realize, oh, this is actually something engaging. It'd be interesting, again, to hear from students, what's the best way to get this information to you?
Well, and when I go to schools, I try to always speak to the students, like, how will you listen to us? And they say, we want to hear from our peers. Overall, that's what they're saying.
Cool. All right, any other comments, suggestions, feedback from the board?
Thank you for the print copy. I appreciate it.
Yes, it's helpful.
I do. Thank you for this. I do have questions. I'm looking at the one about self-defense, and those of who know where I've been on this one has been for a while. When I read this definition, I need to ask, and I guess this is probably legal too, does our definition line up with the legal definition of what self-defense is? Because when I see this, it says a student who is physically attacked may act in self-defense without consequences if the student is unable to leave the area of a pending attack, period. So if I get hit, if a kid just walks down the hallway and hit me, I can't defend myself according to this definition. Am I reading that right?
You are. Essentially, it's the removal of that doctrine that as long as you have a legal right to be there, you don't have to retreat. So, however, that is used in Florida criminal law. There's a standard, there's different standards for civil law, and in this case, an administrative type rule that we would be putting into place. So essentially, what this would codify is that any level of self-defense that included something other than a retreat was not permissible. So if retreat is, it does make a duty to retreat. So if retreat is possible, the student has to retreat. If retreat is not possible, then the student may defend. That would be what this sets up. Now, as whether it's in keeping with the law, criminal law in the state of Florida says if you're in a place where you have a legal right to be, you can use equal and opposite force to defend yourself. So that's not really what's required here, because that's called the castle doctrine, by the way. It used to be just with the home, and then in Florida it became anywhere you have a legal right to be.
And the scenario I'm thinking of, guys, is if a kid gets hit, so they
And
have
hit back.
They can't hit back.
Got it.
Have to retreat.
If they get hit, they have to
I
retreat.
don't agree with that. I don't agree with that because that hit could be something, or there could be another hit following behind that kid, that hit, that puts that kid in detriment of losing their life. So you're saying, I just got to take this lick and keep going.
No, you can absolutely hit back, and there is a consequence for hitting back.
There should be a consequence if I didn't initiate it.
You are opening yourself up to coming from the seat of a former high school administrator. If we allow students to hit back, we will become an unhinged Wild West.
It's already that.
No, I disagree. I
already
wholeheartedly
that. It's
disagree. It
already
is
that
not the
because
Wild West.
It's already that because you're telling the kid they have to basically ball up and get the crap beat out of them.
No.
And they can't do anything. That's what this is
No, if
basically
they're in a
saying.
situation where-
Unless they can run. And if there's no way for them to run, they just got to take it.
No.
And let me be clear, I'm not saying that's what the state, that's what the law says. That's what I'm saying. This policy says it, and we would be permitted to enact this policy. That's what this statement says as you define it there, right?
If a student is in a situation where they're being hit and there is no way to get out, they are absolutely allowed to defend themselves.
Okay, but
And then
how do you know if they're defending themselves or if it's a fight? Because this doesn't really clarify that. Look at it, read it. Because this says, when I read this, if you walk up on the scene and this person is defending themselves, according to your definition, that could be viewed as a fight.
I feel like we have defined it to you are allowed to then, in that instance where you are backed into a corner, you are allowed to aggress back until you are able to escape.
No, it says you can use the same amount
Did we
of
not-
force. It says you can use the same amount of force that's being coming at you. And if I get hit and I come back with the hit, then someone walks up on it, now that's a fight. So I was defending myself, but now you're saying it's a fight.
No, you're allowed to hit back, and then when you have
I just said we couldn't hit back.
if you are backed into a corner, and I'm going off my experience on the committee. If you're backed into a corner and there's nowhere for you to go, so I'm in a classroom in the corner of the building and I'm stuck right there, and someone comes up and hits me, I can use force to retaliate, equal force to retaliate until I am able to escape the locked corner, and then I must stop the retaliation. So for instance, you hit me, I'm in the corner, I hit you back, and you stumble backwards enough that I can skirt away and go get help. That is self-defense.
That is correct.
What is not self-defense is I'm standing at the bus loop, you come up and hit me, and I hit you back.
Why wouldn't it be?
Because I have so many other things to do at the bus loop besides hit back. I could turn around, I could go find the adult, I could run. There's lots of things I could do besides hit you back. Because when I hit you back, I'm engaging in a fight.
Is that legal?
Yes. The duty to retreat would be, secondary to the ability to, the ability to retreat. So you'd have to retreat unless retreat were not possible. Now, I will say that is not the current legal standard for criminal law in Florida, but it may be in civil cases, and depending upon the situation, that certainly could be applicable, and this could be something that we would be within our rights to enact.
So if that happens, and then the parents of one of these kids says, my kid had the right to defend themselves, and they call the police, and it goes to that defense, where are we at that? As a district?
Kid had a right to defend himself, what do you mean? Because he got hit by another student?
Yes.
Right.
They have a right to defend themselves.
They
There's a
defend-
consequence for that right.
But then we've said this kid was fighting when this kid actually was defending himself.
I think through the due process investigation, it would be determined whether that student was fighting or defending themselves. And if he was defending himself, he would not be receiving disciplinary consequences from the school.
How often does that happen?
How often does what happen?
How often do we say that it was self-defense?
It has,
I don't
we have reviewed cases where students did not receive disciplinary consequences because it was self-defense. I think of a specific incident on a bus where a student was between the window and the aisle and could not get out and fought their way out, and we considered it self-defense.
This is one I have a real issue with, because as a person, you have a right to defend yourself, period. Whether you're in school, wherever you're at, you're saying that I have to retreat. I understand that we're in a school setting. There should be some control. But if you get cold-cocked, you're saying I got to run, and I don't know what's going to happen next. That's what you guys are saying, correct?
If you can retreat,
If you can. Who determines if I can?
the investigation.
And I would just say that is within the power of the board in setting its policy to do one or the other.
Can you repeat that, Attorney Powers?
In setting its board policy, and Code of Student Conduct becomes board policy upon enactment or upon adoption. At that point, the board is free to accept within its Code of Student Conduct, which is generated by the Committee on Operations, but this language that the board is going to adopt as its policy may state that the right to self-defense is subject to immediate retreat if immediate retreat is available, like it does now, or to say that, or to establish a different definition for self-defense that does include, and I would specifically not include the term retaliation, because a retaliatory strike is no longer self-defense. So, it's not evening up. If he pops me, I get to pop him. It's more a matter of if the only course of action is a retreat is not available, and the only course of action is to engage, you can write a definition that includes that. Or you can leave that undefined, which is not wise.
Which leaves that big gray area, which is the problem that I hear all the time. It's a gray area. You guys are educators. Y'all have been in the school system. I'm coming from a different perspective. I'm coming from the perspective of folk that come to me and say, hey, my kid, what is my kid going to do if they're coming at me? If they're coming at my kid? There has to be something that they can do. And I'm tending to go that way where you're talking about, Attorney Powers, because we need to help the kid that's the victim.
The advantage that what Code of Student Conduct Committee is setting out there, the advantage of that, though there may be disadvantages, the advantage is that is a bright line rule, right? At that point, it was just like when we said multiple students involved in one fight. That was the bright line rule. The take-home message then to everyone was, do not pile on in a fight, because then everybody's getting expelled. Likewise, this is a bright line rule. You got hit. Okay, we're not going to get into a bunch of discussion about whether or not you had a right to hit back or anything else. You got hit. Did you walk away and go seek alternative action? Go tell someone, get out of the area or something? Or did you not? Because if the answer is that you didn't, instead you fought back, then at that point, you're no longer under the protection of the sort of self-defense, unless it was impossible for you to retreat. So the advantage is it establishes a bright line rule where it's, did you hit back? And if so, you have a lot of explaining to do. Or you can establish a rule that's not quite as bright line as that, but then does take into account a lot of individual factors. The problem is then that becomes a very fact-specific scenario. And every fact has to be judged, every scenario has to be judged individually that way by the people who are going to be writing up the referrals and the discipline procedures. And then that's always going to be a vague factual determination when it goes in front of DOA, for example. Because DOA is going to look at what our policy says. And is our policy a bright line rule? Makes it very easy for us. Is our policy one which involves a lot of judgment about how someone was or was not defending? Just like in the criminal justice system, that becomes an issue in every case. So you can do it either way you want to, but there's advantages and disadvantages to each.
I would just hope that we would look at this just a little bit more further, look at it a little closer. I understand where everybody is on this, but I think we just need to look at it and make sure that the victim, the person that's being victimized, because if it's a self-defense, that means there's a victim. And we need to make sure that we're not just excluding the rights of a victim and saying that they have to always run and that they cannot, basically you're saying they can defend themselves if they have a way out, or if they don't have a way out. If they don't have a way out. If you're in, and maybe y'all never been in a fight before, when you're in a fight, if someone hits you, you're in defense mode. You're looking to defend yourself. Why does it have to be that I have to find a way out if I'm being attacked? That doesn't make sense to me. That doesn't make sense to me. I've worked in the prison system, in the criminal justice system. That doesn't even work in that system. If it has to be that a person can do just enough, which you have in here, enough to get away from the situation, or to somebody get there to help or stop it. But we see these fights on. I don't know if you guys see. I see a lot of videos of fights where kids are just getting cold cocked, and then they retaliate by, or I want to say retaliate. They fight back because they don't know where the next lick is coming from. If it's your kid, you're going to tell your kid, you better run?
No, but I think the whole premise is you can hit back, and there is a consequence for that. All behavior has a consequence, positive or negative.
Well,
So no one is saying that you can't hit back. No, if you want to hit back, but there's going to be a consequence for the said actions.
I'm just going to ask that y'all please look at that some more, because I think there's some work that could be done on that one. From the perspective of what I'm talking about.
The factor that you're bringing up is the primary aggressor phenomenon.
Right.
You want to look at who the primary aggressor is in a situation, and that's in policies and procedures that I've seen written that were trying to address similar issues. That is frequently a determination that is made somewhere along the investigation at the school as to who was a primary aggressor. But then how you incorporate that into what happens if someone's primary aggressor, and did someone else then turn the tables and now become the primary aggressor because one kid slapped a kid in the back of the head, so the other kid went in and pummeled his face, So is there a swap of the primary aggressor, not just the initial aggressor?
Right.
So those are all the kinds of discussions we'd have in determining whether something was self-defense in a particular case.
Because what I think we tend to do just go with it, say, hey, if the kid swung back, it's a fight, and we tend to go with that. when oftentimes that's not always the case. That's all I'm saying. That's not always the case, and sometimes the investigation, if a teacher or staff member walks up on it and they see a kid swinging back, they automatically say that kid is fighting. That could have been just defending themselves, and they didn't see a way out. If I'm fighting, I'm fighting. I'm trying to keep my eyes on what's going on in front of me. I may not see a route out. My route out is to defend myself, to fight. So I'm just asking that you please look at that again, because I think there's some things that can kind of help clarify that.
Well, and in a fight or in self-defense scenarios, the primary aggressor or the initial aggressor is not necessarily always judged by the person who actually won.
Right.
So
Right.
if someone can legitimately be defending themselves and inflict worse, in response. So again, those are all factual determinations that have to be made by the school officials at the time, and then are, of course, subject to review.
And one of our indicators within the fighting definitions include the culpability of the origin and the violence of the fight, where a student can be held to a higher standard if they were the originator of the fight or the more violent fighter in the situation.
And that goes back to what he was just saying.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question for clarity? So is it the will of this board then for language to be considered, and if so, in this category, Attorney Powers, I believe you sit on the committee, correct? Do you?
Yes.
Yes, okay. When is the committee reconvening?
We will we don't have a date, but we will reconvene after this meeting.
Okay, is that the will of the board then to consider changes to this section?
Not my will.
That's requested by this board member, to at least go back and look at it and take into consideration the things that I'm saying. You may not change it, but I still would like for this committee to go back and look at that and consider what I'm saying, because that is legitimate, what I'm bringing forward.
I will review this specific definition with the committee.
We have to make sure.
Still other board members that want to weigh in. Go ahead, board member.
Which board member sits on the Code of Student? Okay.
We've already, I mean, the reason I have such a strong opinion about it is because I know that we've already talked about it at extreme depth as a committee. We've already talked about it on multiple occasions in multiple sessions. And so that's why I feel so strongly that, like, everything that you're saying, we have talked about at depth. But, I mean, so I just don't think that the committee is going to bring forth any new light to something that we've already talked about even in this session, this review of it this year.
So, thank you, Dr. James. So with that clarity, and that was going to be my primary question. So if the committee has already convened and has already discussed this specific topic and every concern that has been brought to light today with utmost scrutiny, and that committee, apart from creating an entirely separate committee to review this, the committee has made the recommendation to keep this language or have this language the way it is. With that being, I mean, I don't want to waste anybody's time. So that's where I am. Prior to hearing what you just said, I was going to say, hey, I'm fine with them reviewing it again. And if they still come to the same conclusion, so be it. But understanding that they've already gone to great lengths to analyze this specific area, and maybe you have something else to add. I'm seeing some movement up. I don't know. Dr. Hembrooks looks like she wants to say something.
Come forward, Dr. Hembrook.
We just wanted to reiterate what we're striking out in that definition and what we're adding. And so we actually think it provides the chance for students to defend themselves a little bit more. So if you see that in our original definition from last year, we wrote that retaliating by striking or hitting, for example, punching, slapping, kicking a person back or choosing not to leave will not be considered self-defense. But now what we're saying is that a student should only use the amount of force necessary. So again, if they are on the ground or in a corner, they can push, kick, punch to get out of the situation, but then they do have the duty to retreat. So I just wanted to make sure that we saw the difference between what was in the original definition and the definition that the committee is proposing.
Thank you, Dr. Hembrook. I'll say that what you just said is very helpful to me, because what we get as board members is, why should my child have to ball themselves up and take it, so to speak? And that's not what I heard in your statement. I'll also say, let's think about what the major complaints are about schools these days. It is violence. It is fighting. It is disrespect. It is situations that end up escalating because of the quick triggers that so many people seem to have these days. And it would be my goal, we're to be very definite to Board Member Cummings' concerns and points. We need to be very definite. And what I just heard you say, Dr. Hembrook, sounded pretty definite to me, which is reassuring. Because in some cases, we're having to delineate for kids that in a school setting, what we're asking of them and their behaviors and their responses to things needs to be different than the way they may be responding in the community, which could save their life. We have to be able to draw that distinction and make sure that we're being true to it, that schools are safer places, that schools are an oasis of peace and sanity and tranquility, where we have our eyes on the ball of learning. And those types of reactions, we better be able to back it up, and I know that sometimes we get accused of having too many administrators, too much staff around. Well, if someone can, and we know how loud kids can yell when they've got something to say, and I've experienced this myself at secondary level, where a kid will say, you better back off, because I don't want to have to hit you, I don't want to have to hit you back. Kids have to learn that they have a lot at stake by the choices that they make. So I want to honor your concerns, Board Member Cummings, and based on what Dr. Hembrook just shared, are you seeing a different picture? Because
I'll tell you why. When I read this next statement, it says self-defense may include asking an adult for help, restraining or blocking the attacker, shielding oneself or others from being hit, or pushing to get away from the attacker. It doesn't say that I can strike back. It says I can push, I can hold someone, I can do all those things. But you're telling me that I got to get hit and take the hit, and God knows what else is coming behind that hit. Are y'all not saying the same thing I'm saying? Because it's clear when it says self-defense may include asking for an adult for help, restraining, blocking an attacker, shielding oneself or others from being hit. If someone's hitting you, fighting you, you're telling me they can't swing back. They have to find a way to retreat. That doesn't make sense to me. Nowhere in the world does that make sense to me. I don't get it. And then this kid, that kid that does swing back is now going to have a consequence because they swung back. Because they didn't push, because when the investigation is done, you're going to say, well, they should have held them, or they should have pushed them, or whatever. Maybe y'all have never been engaged in some type of altercation, but you're not thinking, oh, when they hit me, I'm going to hold them, I'm going to push them away. You're trying to defend yourself. That's the thought. I want to defend myself. I want to do whatever I need to do to get this over with. Hopefully somebody's going to get there soon enough and stop it.
all right, so maybe I shouldn't be admitting this, but I got attacked on a playground by somebody. I got a good lick, hit him in the stomach. They bent over. It was just a good hit, knocked the wind out of them. And they're bent over, and I wasn't quite sure what to do. It just ended that fast. So I backed up. And then the teacher, this was in elementary school, so I've grown up saying that. And then the teacher was under the overhang and then came out. So it was over at that point. What I wanted to do was pound that person on the back till they fell on the ground. But I didn't do that. I guess because I was so shocked I got that good one. I don't know. But see, these are the nuances of things. And yes, we have to allow kids to protect themselves. But then, I don't know. Look at the extreme in society today. People carry it on. They carry it on.
I saw specifically, I'm thinking about one that keeps jumping out of my mind. Happened at one of our middle schools. I won't say the name of the school, but these girls, this was a girl fight. They pulled these girls out, and they were friends with this little girl, and then they circled her, and then they went to pummeling on this little girl. And now she's circled. Tell me what was the retreat when she circled. So she fought back, and she got suspended. Those are the types of incidents that I'm talking about.
And I think this policy, as they propose, that might actually help in that situation if school officials looked at the fact that she had an opportunity or didn't have an opportunity to retreat.
That's a whole different.
So that could be the.
When it was brought to their attention, she still got.
Correct, because the language they're proposing is not included right now. I think if I can hear what Reverend Cumming is saying, I think what he's asking is the word strike to be added to, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in the statement that says, self-defense is an action taken that's necessary to protect oneself. It may include asking an adult for help, restraining or blocking the attacker, shielding oneself or others from being hit, or pushing to get away from the attacker. Pushing or striking to get away from the attacker.
That would help.
Right.
That would truly help.
So
because right now you're saying, I can't strike back.
That's exactly where I was going. It's what it takes to get that person off of you.
Exactly.
But once they're off, you got to back up.
I agree with that. I'm not saying kids, you start pummeling the kid, you keep pummeling the kid because you got the best of. That goes into what Attorney Power is saying. But if it takes a strike for me to get this person off of me, I need to get them off me.
So if we can all be on the same page, because I think I'm hearing what you're saying is push or strike to get away from the attacker, with the end of that sentence being the most valuable part, that I am striking to get away from the attacker, and then I am removing myself and getting away from the attack.
As long as I can be able to do whatever I need to do to de-escalate or retreat. But if I cannot do what I need to do to de-escalate or retreat, that's not fair to the kid.
And if I could, Madam Chair, I'd ask for Attorney Powers to weigh in. I don't have any problem on behalf of operations side as long as Attorney Powers finds that acceptable legally.
That would be fine from the legal department's perspective, but again, this is something that the committee and operations and then the board ultimately votes on. So what I would say is any language that we use which does not avoid a complete bright line and instead does set it up for offensive behavior versus defensive behavior. Because every one of these things that we're going to have to do, every case in which a strike is utilized, the question is going to be, was a strike offensive or was a strike defensive? And to some degree, it's always easier to say in a strike is the fight might have been over, but then that strike. And so that's going to be the point that is going to probably confuse situations. And look, it's a messy process figuring out exactly what happened. I don't mean.
A lot of times there's video.
Sure,
Yeah,
absolutely.
a lot of times there's video you can watch, because I would argue that if you're strong, you can shove somebody, they can go backwards and hit their head, and God forbid, but it wasn't that you were trying to kill them. You were just trying to get them off of you. So to me, a push is just as justifiable as a strike, is just as justifiable as a push if it truly is defense. And that's, again, where a lot of videos come in. And
I think just to play devil's advocate for Ms. Gwynn in the discipline department, the number of times that a single strike or one or two strikes is delivered and then stopped and the child retreats is very, very, very low. So we're talking about, we are splitting hairs here. I can hear what Reverend Cummings is requesting, and I can get on board with it. But I think it's important for the record to note that the likelihood that a single or very few strikes are delivered to alleviate and give an opportunity to get away is few and far between. So we probably are not going to see this come forward, but I think I'm personally, as the committee member on the Code of Conduct, fine. Let's add strike, remembering that it's strike to get away from the attacker.
which buys time for hopefully a staff member that's around to then begin to intervene.
Because
Yes.
Y'all just don't know how many videos. I've seen videos, again, middle school, some of these are middle school, where the person is on top of them, beating them, and both get a fight. I don't get it. When someone grabs you by your hair, snatches you down to the ground, gets on top of you and start beating you, and you're on the bottom and you're trying to fight your way out, but you get suspended for fighting.
Again, at that point, though, I would argue, didn't have the ability to retreat, right?
They did have the ability to retreat.
So
So
therefore
this
they
new
can.
language is going to be helpful, and that's why it's being added. But currently, under the current Code of Student Conduct, that isn't present.
Even with that, even with this new language, this person that's on the bottom, if they're striking back, they're going to still be suspended based on this.
No, they're striking back until
Strike
they
doesn't-
get away, they're pushing to get away from the attacker. I would say that if a student is on top of another and they are being pummeled, and the student on the bottom hits even 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, until they are able to get up from underneath and retreat from the situation, that would be defined as self-defense. Would you guys from the discipline department agree with that?
Depending on how it started,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, because of course it depends on how it started.
I just gave you a great scenario. Kid walks down the hall, they grab her by her hair, snatch her down to the ground.
That would be self-defense.
Absolutely.
Yes, 100%.
Under the new definition, absolutely, which is the purpose of
With
this.
clarity and training of our staff and with the overarching goal that, again, we're looking to minimize this. You know, kids are going to fight. We know that. That's been going on since time began. But this extreme aggression that goes in from the community into the schools and really turns into something horribly violent with lethal consequences is relatively new in the last 20 years.
You're muted.
You're muted.
I feel like we're walking a very dangerous line. And I know that the students in Marion County are told from the time that they enter kindergarten, I can't speak for pre-K, they are taught at school, keep your hands to yourself from the age of 5.
Use your words.
Use your words. That being said, I circled back to the piece of education and teaching our students what is self-defense and what does it look like. Because we had an example this morning that was, they felt that it was self-defense. By what we're talking about here, that is not self-defense. And so we all, as a school community, have to be on the same page. This is what self-defense looks like. And we have to teach our children what that looks like. And it will benefit them as they step outside of school. So I just want to reiterate how important some of these pieces that we've discussed today, specifically self-defense, are, that we're not just flipping through a slideshow. Here's slide 39. You may defend yourself, but you can only throw one punch, whatever that ends up looking like or hit. No, that's not what it looked like. And that we really are spending time talking about what that is and strategies for how to get out of that and how to avoid being in a bad situation.
How to never get in it.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, in the first place.
Don't be at the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong people.
Because you can feel it coming.
Yeah. So anyway, I just want to say that again because I really would like to do some prevention on this. The family that was before us today, they didn't want their kid to be expelled. It's just not knowing. You know, they think that their kids can fight back with whatever force they deem acceptable, and that's not the case. So defining what acceptable is and what you can do as a student to protect yourself and what that looks like. So that's all I have.
Board Member Campbell.
Thank you. So completely agree with the education component. Don't want to add just one more thing to our teachers that they have to do. So that says to me, to the team, as I've talked to Dr. Gullett about this before, about word problems we're creating or reading assignments we're creating where a student is actually reading scenario-based information and they're choosing the main idea, they're choosing the antagonist, the protagonist, they're seeing it in real-world language as early as elementary on, and we're actually putting our own code of student conduct into academic setting. And so it's not just us teaching them something with a video, but they're actually reading and they're participating in understanding. And so I know that's just one more thing to add to the professional leadership and learning team and the curriculum builders and all of that. But that's how I see this being most effective from an education standpoint, as opposed to just showing another video and slide whatever, or even saying, okay, teachers, you've got to do this today, add this into your already busy day. Let's start being a little more creative in how we're also meeting those learning objectives while we're teaching them things that are specific to our district. And we can transfer that to all kinds of things. As we're doing African American history, can we talk about specific to Marion County and have lessons about Dr. N.H. Jones? And, can we, same thing with teaching our students math problems and how we can get them to start understanding what a weekly salary actually looks like in a word problem. I mean, there's ways that we can start embedding real life into curriculum that also meets learning objectives, and this would be another great example of that. So that's all I have on that.
Thank you.
I just really don't wholly agree with that. Dr. Campbell, I feel like in these extreme situations, our kids need to role play. We need to talk about what it looks like to get bumped in the hall, or for somebody to say something smart to you, or do a joke against your mom, whatever it is, this instigation piece, or this, I'm going to take immediate action. And there needs to be, they have to learn how to react or not react. And I don't think, and I hate to say this because I would love for the problem to be able to be solved by reading and just talking about it when you're doing the main idea, whatever that looks like. But I'm just going to be honest, I don't think that's going to help. I think that it has to be real-life practice, and I think, as Dr. Gullett mentioned earlier, when we target and look at data where these issues are extreme, where we're having more fights at specific schools, maybe we look at pulling a small group. I know, and I hate to say this, because I know there's not enough hours in the day, enough minutes in the day. But if we're really looking at changing behavior and helping our students be successful citizens, they do have to learn that. And so, if we've got a middle school group and we know that we've got this group of students that are struggling to problem solve or how they're reacting, then we pull and do a little, role playing for a couple of different days.
And let's remember too that we've got our next presentation, which is the mental health assistance.
Yes. Right,
And
social
we're
emotional
talking
learning.
about tier 2
Yeah,
and
fall
tier
right into
3 and tier 1 and
It's a component
the
to the
expectations that we have for, for all of these coping skills and what we're trying to do. And, we're just really struggling against what seems to have become normalized and tolerable in society. That, but again, I know you're probably tired of hearing it, but I keep circling back to our lowest functioning students learn to discriminate environments. That's not how we do it here, Yes, kids are going to fight, but this escalating of each other and just these quick to triggers, nobody really wants to live like that. And I just think that we need to be strong, but we also need to make sure the kids know that they can protect themselves.
And what that looks like.
And that we have a lot of dedicated staff that are ready and willing. And if there's something that doesn't seem right and we get a phone call, then we go through the channels to make sure that it's made right.
Chair.
And we can continue to belabor this, but I think we need a wrap up here soon about
Understood.
what the direction is for this group.
Last thing I'll say is on the elements of persuasion, science of persuasion. It's not just one tool. So while I understand exactly what you're saying, I don't think that my recommendation should be negated because it's multiple steps of persuasion that are needed to get students to understand what actually needs to be done. And so incorporating it into something they're already doing is also a good idea. That's all I'll say.
How do we connect what they're learning to the real world, Anything else? Dr. Gullett.
So I'm going to ask again, board, for clarity before we move on to the next topic. What is the will of the board for this item that has been discussed?
Did we get to consensus on adding strike Did we get to consensus?
I'm okay with that,
Yes.
with instruction.
Okay. So I'll look to my team. Do we have any questions other than the addition of the word strike to that definition?
Oh, ma'am.
Good. Okay. Sometimes it's such great conversation, and then we have to make sure that we come back to the end and clarify. We're good.
So will there be one more meeting of these? Because there were some other things, the separation of the visual imagery and all, or it's just going to be, so we won't have another briefing on what that looks like? That's
I
fine.
think we need to.
Does the
And
board,
that's
does the board need another topic of this?
No, I think you could just send us an email with just.
Right.
Just some of the
Right, the
updates?
revisions.
Correct.
Sure.
It's okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
I think it's
Thank you.
important to all of us to just make things better and get things right. Appreciate your time.
Chair.
Any public comment? Oh, I'm sorry.
Listen, guys, I'm passionate about this, but I'm passionate about it for a reason. Because you're right, there's too much violence in our schools. But oftentimes, I see the victims of these things unjustly get a consequence when they're just trying to go to school. And we need to take those things into consideration.
Sure.
So that's why I'm on that one. But I appreciate you guys listening, and I thank you for bringing forth the student code of conduct. I think you guys do a tremendous job on what you do with it every year. But that's been one thing that I've always been harping on for the last few years. So thank you. At least it has some better clarity to it, I think, by adding that to it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Is there any public comment? All right, hearing none. Is the board ready to roll into the mental health assistance allocation, which will solve all our problems?
Yes.
Okay. And Madam Chair, if I may introduce, this is the last topic for today. So Ms. Del Nodal is coming forward, and she and her team have been waiting and ready to present the mental health assistance allocation, which you've seen as a reminder each year. You see an update on the plan and how it's expected to roll forward. So thank you.
No pressure on fixing all the problems. but-
No pressure.
We believe in you.
Good morning, Chair Thrower, Superintendent Dr. Gullett, and board members. This morning, as in years past, we will be reviewing the Marion County Public Schools Comprehensive Mental Health Plan. All Florida school districts are required to create and implement a mental health plan that outlines the management and the utilization of the annual mental health assistance allocation funds that we receive. Our team routinely reviews the components of the plan to ensure we continue to improve upon current practices, adjust to meet any new needs and challenges, and maximize our impact. Most importantly, we want to ensure that we remain committed to the foundational goals that we set forth in the development of the plan in 2018. Ms. Amanda Steckman is here with me this morning to provide an overview of the framework that we created and have supported over the past 5 years. Ms. Steckman holds the role of mental health coordinator, a required component of the mental health plan as mandated by the state. Ms. Steckman oversees the implementation of the mental health plan framework and the allocation of its resources. She has held this role since 2020, giving her in-depth knowledge and familiarity with the components of the plan. At this time, I would like to invite Ms. Steckman to provide the additional information that we have provided for you today.
Thank you, and good morning.
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 All right. The Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Act was enacted in 2018, as Ms. Del Nodal had mentioned, to support school safety and student engagement in Florida schools. This law funds our Safe Schools requirements for physical school safety, as well as the mental health and behavioral prevention and intervention requirements of the mental health assistance allocation, which we're reviewing today. This plan outlines 5 goals, each meeting the requirements provided to us by the state. Goal number 1 provides and increases access to mental health and behavioral services for our students. Goal number 2 provides those services utilizing a multi-tiered system of support framework. Goal number 3 provides professional development to staff on how to identify and support students with mental health challenges. Goal number 4 explains how we work with our community partners to connect students and families to mental health resources, both within Marion County Public Schools and the community. And goal number 5 engages our families by building relationships and assisting them with service navigation. Looking at our first goal, the Florida Department of Education requires the use of our mental health assistance allocation to fund additional school-based mental health providers in order to reduce the student-to-provider ratio and increase direct mental health support to students. We will plan to fund 2 additional school counselor positions, 5 additional school psychologists, and 10 additional school social worker positions for the 24-25 school year under this plan. By reducing ratios for our school-based mental health providers, these professionals will have more time to provide direct intervention and support to our students to address those mental health and behavioral concerns. I like to mention that the size-alike districts that we compared ourselves to are Lake County, Manatee, Sarasota, St. John's, and St. Lucie. Another way to provide access to students is to identify those youth who are in need of intervention and support. We accomplish this at the elementary level by providing a behavior observation rating tool for teachers to complete. This rating tool is used to measure externalizing behaviors. So, for example, does the student have poor self-control? And internalizing behaviors, such as does the student worry often? Results are provided back to the school teams for further review. And I'd like to mention that this is just one data point to be considered with other sources of information by the team. Other sources could include office discipline referrals and also staff and parent input. At the secondary level, we depend on staff and parent referral to identify students in need of further intervention. The behavior observation tool is then administered to the student to complete and provide additional information to that school team. At this time, we do not utilize the behavior observation tool as a universal screener at the secondary level due to it being a student-completed screening tool. However, you'll see secondary student data on your screen from Fort McCoy Middle, the middle school side of Fort McCoy School, and Horizon Academy, who are participating in a pilot program this school year utilizing the tool as a universal screening instrument, meaning the students are able to take the rating scale, and we're able to see, based on self-report, externalizing behaviors such as I have poor self-control, and internalizing behaviors such as I worry often. Again, here we see the results of these 2 pilot schools, and you'll notice, as a self-report behavior screener, we have identified a higher percentage of students to be considered by those school teams. To support this, in addition to the school-based mental health providers at these schools, we have also our contracted mental health counselors assigned to those 2 school sites, as well as additional coaching to those school-based teams to know how to offer supports to those students who have been identified by the screening instrument. School teams obtain staff and parent input by utilizing the multidisciplinary team referral form. This provides additional key information to the school-based team for consideration of further support and intervention for students. Again, this information is to be paired with the behavior observation tool results and also reviewed with other data sources. It is important for teams to look at multiple sources of data to make good decisions in regards to what supports would be most appropriate to put in place for students. School-based teams are also comprised of stakeholders from varying backgrounds to ensure all perspectives are considered. School-based team members include school administrators, school counselors, school psychologists, school social workers, student services managers, and our school resource officers. Our second goal is to provide mental health and behavioral supports utilizing a multi-tiered system of support approach. Tier 1 supports are provided to all students in the classroom setting. These programs teach student resiliency skills and how to get along with others, which we just discussed. Our continued focus for the upcoming school year is to increase the knowledge and skills to implement these resources in the classrooms effectively. Tier 2 supports are provided to groups of students by the multidisciplinary team members to meet the students' identified needs. Interventions are matched to the areas of concern identified by the multidisciplinary team, and they're also monitored to see whether or not those interventions are effective for the students receiving that additional instruction. Tier 3 supports are provided to students in which Tier 1 and Tier 2 supports have been unsuccessful. Those interventions are intensified and individualized to provide the highest level of care for those students. As we continue to see our student population grow, we have seen an increase in student need across Marion County schools. The number of students referred for assistance to our multidisciplinary teams has increased by 1,083 referrals within the past 2 years. Our teams are responding appropriately as we see an increase in students being identified for services, and by proactively addressing these student needs, we are beginning to see positive outcomes for students, such as a reduction in our school-based Baker Act numbers, which we will discuss in a later slide. As we review the suicide assessment and threat assessment numbers historically, we can see an overall trend of the number of suicide assessments staying consistent across time. However, threat assessment numbers have fluctuated within the last 5 years. For the 2020-2021 school year, which we deem our COVID year, we had a reduction of students on campus and less peer interaction, which we believe led to the significant drop in those threat assessment numbers. This school year, we saw an increase of 57 threat assessments up to the month of April. However, our team believes this increase is due to the new threat assessment procedures adopted by the state, which resulted in teams considering additional factors contributing to the initiation of a threat assessment, as well as the increase of student population and interactions on school campuses. Starting in 2018, the state has required all staff employed by the school district to be trained in youth mental health first aid. This training provides information regarding early signs and symptoms of youth experiencing mental health challenges, as well as those that are in crisis. Participants learn to appropriately respond to these identified youth and how to refer students to professional mental health supports. In 2022, an additional requirement for school districts was to annually verify that 80% of all elementary, middle, and high school personnel had been trained in this youth mental health awareness certification. Marion County continues to lead the state in the number of employees meeting this requirement. We attribute our success to the fact that we have never stopped our training plan from when we first began in 2018, including our time of distance learning during COVID. At that time, we switched over to a state-approved virtual platform to ensure employees continue to have access to our nationally certified youth mental health first aid instructors so they could meet this requirement. As you can see, we are currently exceeding the 80% requirement for the 23-24 school year, and we do have additional offerings and opportunities for employees through May. Marion County Public Schools works with public and state agencies to identify and problem solve barriers to students and families receiving mental health and behavioral support. This has led to our continuum of school mental health services meetings. We meet as a community team once every other month to provide updates on our current available resources and discuss trends in our respective agencies. This has led to many different benefits, including the creation of a service navigation tool to assist families with navigating the resources available both in Marion County Public Schools and the community. In addition, local review team meetings provide an opportunity for various agencies involved with a student and their family to communicate and work together to support that youth. These community collaborations are imperative to the success that we see with our students. As we review our Baker Act data, it's important to note this data is reflective of each Baker Act incident. Therefore, multiple incidents may be attributed to one student. Our teams work to provide interventions and safety plans to those students identified with this need. As mentioned previously, our school-based multidisciplinary teams have been able to provide consistent mental health support to our students through intervention, which we believe has contributed to the decrease in the number of repeated Baker Act incidents with students. Additionally, we partner with our local Baker Act facilities to provide training and support to our school teams on de-escalation strategies and how to support those students in crisis. But keep in mind that our school-based team members are not able to make the determination of whether or not Baker Act criteria has been met. Only law enforcement is able to make that determination on our school campuses. Finally, our last goal, which is family engagement. Schools work with families to assist with accessing mental health services and support their children. We have multiple ways in which we provide information to families. For example, finding creative ways to connect parents and students to our mental health and wellness webpage by creating posters, as you can see on the slide, which have been printed for school campuses to display for individuals to access via QR code. This web page provides an opportunity for students to connect to their school-based mental health provider. It guides families on how to access mental health support within the school system and provides information on how to navigate mental health resources in the community. We have also had the opportunity to present at family-focused events explaining this information to families in person. Finally, as school teams work with students, they also take the time to schedule conferences with parents and provide resources such as the Marion County Counseling Services Availabilities List, which is a list of community-based agencies and services addressing mental health and behavioral needs that are available right here in Marion County. Our plan for the mental health assistance allocation is to continue what we've always done, and that's to support providing direct services to students by funding school-based and contracted mental health providers. Therefore, 90% of the budget will be allocated to funding mental health staff, which includes 18 additional school-based mental health providers, such as school counselors, psychologists, and social workers. Then 4 mental health staff will provide district-level support to implement the mental health allocation, which includes coaching and professional development for school staff, as well as data management associated with the reporting requirements of the allocation. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Gullett.
Thank you very much. Again, there's a lot of information that goes behind the scenes in putting this presentation together, but Board, we look forward to your questions, comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gullett. Would like to lead us off?
Sure, I'll go.
All right, Vice Chair Conrad.
Thank you, ladies, for all the information you shared with us. I just have a couple of questions, really, some of them are just following after the conversation we just had. On slide 4, I'm just double checking, slide 4, the information you shared on highly elevated, and normal levels of intervention. We get that per school? We collect that per school?
Yes.
Okay, then do we, at any point, compare it to our discipline data? Do our students that are getting into fights, high levels of disrespect, those sort of things, does it correlate? Do they fall into that highly elevated classification?
Yeah, so it is one data point, so I just want to make sure to reemphasize
very
that.
true.
So within a week of the close of the window, they will receive the results via spreadsheet, and with that, they're also able to include their discipline data. So as they see students, for example, that are highly elevated, say in externalizing behaviors, and then they also see various office discipline referrals, that's really good information to now we're starting to put the puzzle pieces together to say, okay, we can really target the area of concern and address it appropriately.
Good, that's fantastic, fantastic news. Slide 8, when we look at the increase in referrals, I just want to go back to that education piece with our students, helping them understand what certain offenses look like, how to help them manage their mental health and make better decisions, and being proactive, and helping decrease that number. I think, and I know it's a huge challenge, again, with the hours and minutes that we have in the day, and many times our students that are struggling with their mental health are also struggling academically, and so they're already being pulled, in several different ways to get those accommodations. But
I will say I believe it's also the result of, we have a strong partnership with our student discipline department. And as they're working with students that have received referrals, have received alternative placements, and they're returning to base, a lot of times it's a referral back to the multidisciplinary team, because we're not just wanting to provide consequences, we want to provide intervention and teach those students, to your point. So they may be placed in like a conflict resolution program. So to that fact, I think a lot of this has to do with just, we've got really great teaming and discussion about how do we get those students in earlier, or even reteach the skill after there's been an incident.
so what does that look like, that piece that you're talking about, like, that they're part of a conflict resolution? Is that online? Is that a small group? What does that look like?
Sure. And I'll start with, it's almost counterintuitive to look at this data and think, oh, we really want to decrease those numbers. And to us, when we see them increasing, that means we have more staff that are identifying when a student has a need, and then we're providing those interventions. So that's good data to us. And when we have those groups, we have groups that we have on campus. If we need to refer them to outside agencies as well, it all depends on that team thinking about what exactly is the underlying cause, if we can identify that. What's the level of need that the student has? Is it something that we can provide on campus? And then how best can we allocate our resources to be able to do that? So many times we do have groups, sometimes we have one-on-one kind of interventions that we put in place if that's most appropriate for the student and most appropriate for the staff, and what we have on campus that we can do.
Okay, thank you. I'm happy to hear that we have so much in person. On slide 12, and I'm just going to give a disclaimer, when I'm asking you about the situation, I'm actually thinking of a particular situation of someone that called in, so really I just need a little help understanding the process. So when a child is Baker acted, what does that process look like?
Go for it.
So we'll start from, maybe the teacher has identified some behaviors, or they've said something that they're very worried about. So what happens then?
So our school counselors are the main point of contact on each school campus, because they are our full-time mental health provider there. And so those individuals have been trained to complete what we call a suicide assessment. With the suicide assessment, the counselor is asking very specific questions. They're asking, are you thinking about suicide, or are you thinking about dying? And then from there, they're asking additional follow-up questions specific to how far into the planning process they are to carry out that suicide attempt. If it is a low level, if they determine it's low level, then you're conferencing with the student. They may be referred to that multidisciplinary team to provide intervention, and you're also conferencing with the parent and having that conversation. If they determine it's high level, after utilizing de-escalation techniques and the student is still adamant in making statements that they do want to die by suicide, then we start looking at, well, are they potentially meeting that Baker Act criteria? That's when we actually bring the school resource officer into the conversation, and they're the ones that it's making that determination. If they do make that determination, then the school team must contact the parent prior to that student being removed from campus to notify them that they're being removed for the purpose of a Baker Act.
That's where this particular, I just want to clarify, this is a very particular situation. The student was already under psychiatric care, and I can't recall the other thing, and the parent wasn't reached. So I wondered, is there a procedure in that process when you're contacting parents? Do you call the first two on the contact list? Do you call the first three? Or if it's listed that it's all family members, do you go down further? And the concern was, because she was already receiving pretty deep services, there was a large expense to the family when she was Baker acted, and they were already swimming and struggling financial with the mental health pieces that they were doing at home. And so it appears that that would be the job when they're with the guidance counselor. And I just wanted to ensure that if it was allowable, I didn't know, that we go through at least several contacts before they're released from campus.
We do, and we have documentation. We have a form that's actually required by the state of Florida to document all of our attempts to contact the parent. And we are given the leeway to contact others outside of the parent or guardian to try to get a hold of them. Not going into detail as to why we're contacting the parent, but that it is an emergency and they need to call the school. So that's the procedure, the process for parent notification. For students that are already involved with a high level of care, that goes back to that determination from the school resource officer, because when you're talking about meeting Baker Act criteria, that means that they have no other means to meet safety, that it's an immediate danger, and the school resource officer does not believe that there's any other alternative.
And I understand that. I know, again, it can be a very tricky, line to walk. So, and in this particular situation, the parent was grateful, that the school was so in tune and checking on her child, but they had this other, piece of the puzzle they were struggling with. So thank you for explaining that to me. I appreciate it. It helps me when I speak with parents better understand the process and how it goes. And my last question it fits in with slide 14 as we look at all of the ways that we're meeting the needs of our students and their mental health. Are we going to move chaplains in to this particular role in helping it anyway? Or will there be training? Have you anticipated what that will look like? Any discussion going on?
Can you repeat?
So the governor has said that we can have chaplains on campus to visit, talk with. They're not guidance counselors, but parents can opt in to having their child speak with a chaplain if they feel, it could be didn't pass a test, it could be anything. Do we have a plan for that? Is it being discussed? Is it something that we're thinking about doing?
It has not been discussed yet, but that's something that we can explore. I will mention that as part of the allocation, we do have a requirement for specific mental health staff to be hired to reduce ratios. So those are school counselors, school psychologists, and school social workers. So they are named specifically as individuals that they would want to increase funding for to reduce those ratios for direct mental health support.
So this would really, if we considered it, it would kind of be a bonus, like it would just be an extra, almost like a volunteer spot.
Correct.
Okay.
Even for our suicide risk assessment procedures, again, the state mandates that it's those specific mental health professionals that are the ones that are involved in the de-escalation.
Okay. I would just be interested, if that conversation does move forward, I'd like to know how it unfolds. All right. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, Vice Chair Conrad. Board Member Campbell.
Sure, thank you, and thank you, ladies, for your presentation. To follow up on what Vice Chair Conrad had said, the chaplaincy bill has just been signed into law, so it's not even effective until July 1, but I believe Dr. James did request that we move forward with working on policy, and so the hope is that the board can even have potential policy rolled out ahead of the upcoming school year. And the way the statute reads is the chaplaincy, certainly I guess you can pay them, but I think the intention is that they would be volunteers, kind of supplemental to whatever plans we have in place for whatever purpose. Moving on to a couple of quick questions that I had. My first one is in the self-reporting tool for the middle school students. That's slide 5. So based on these numbers that do seem a little high, but honestly for middle school students, that's okay. I'm assuming this was not anonymous.
No.
Okay,
This is, they are actually logging in with their student number And so we're able to provide, and that's how we know how to target intervention is by the student responses, and that's included in that team discussion.
Sure, okay, so I mean, having 20 to 45% of our students in some level, and this is all understanding just 2 schools, but this is a middle school population, but they are essentially self-reporting that they are concerned about their own behaviors and their own mental health. Those are good and bad statistics. I know how you're saying, it's good that they are self-reporting. It's not great that they're having these struggles, but that's why we're putting teams in place to help them. Okay, great. So that answered my question. The only other, I'm going to go in a line of thought here, slide 13. So I love the fact that you have these new posters with a QR code that gets to your web page. So then I'm sitting here and I go to your web page. So allow me to opine for just a moment. I appreciate that your department has a vision and a mission statement. Personally, as a public relations professional, seeing that the school district has a vision and mission statement, I'm not certain that I'm comfortable with your department having something separate from that. This is just, again, speaking as a public relations professional. Potentially if it's our commitment to you is, or our focus is, and so your department has ideas that support the district vision and mission. So that's my first comment on that. Dr. Gullett, I'm just, again, allow me to opine for just a moment. My other thoughts, we have a category there for homeless and needy services, and I know we are shifting gears on how we speak about that specifically. So as that is updated district-wide, I think that will be helpful. I'm not certain that students would go to that section. And that's kind of the overarching comment that I want to make to wrap up on this. I love the idea that we have posters we're putting in front of students, but this page, when I go to it, doesn't say to me how I'm going to find anything if I'm a student trying to seek anything out. It shows, I understand, this is your web page for your department, your leadership team, your health service, and perhaps there is a different web page that this QR code goes to that I'm missing. And if that's the case, terrific. But if there isn't, and this is where it takes you, then I'm not certain that we're achieving what we're trying to achieve.
I'm going to go first, and then I'm going to...
Perfect, thank you.
So the QR code actually does take you directly to the page that offers mental health support. So on there, students have the ability to do a quick check-in and request support services from school-based mental health providers. It also has emergency contact information, so if they are, for example, have suicide ideation, then there's safe numbers and resources that they can go to. It also provides information on how to access mental health services with Marion County Public Schools, as well as how to access services and resources in the community.
Okay, and I'm reading that now. So thank you for directing me to the correct page that this QR code takes them to. I recommend potentially that the team get some students involved in what this needs to look like. Because right now, it's very clinical, and it's very black and white. I'm reading student wellness check-in surveys. Below are links, da-da-da-da-da. Students in crisis. Is a student going to say, I'm in crisis? Maybe not. And so I know that we had a group, I think Westport High School was working on getting certifications that they might be, so having a student group, actually, I love this again. I think this is wonderful, having them on the back of bathroom doors, like all the things. But if when they get there, it actually gets them to something that's colorful, engaging, whatever, I think it will be way more impactful than what we currently have that I'm looking at.
So if I may, and
Yes.
my brain is going in all sorts of directions, but lightning round answer is we're on it.
Perfect.
Because we've had some conversations, and our information and technology department is fantastic. I have to say that because they get lots of calls from me. And so we've been working with them on not just one main web page, but do we have something that's going to be dedicated to McKinney-Vento, something that's going to be dedicated to attendance, something that's going to be where they can go for all of that information, our parents as well as our staff. I think those are some great suggestions for our students. We've been looking into doing some focus groups with our students, specifically maybe our Safe Promise Clubs, our HOSA teams, those kinds of students that could come and give us some real good feedback. What we've been told is as we're moving our web pages into a more web model, they're making lots of different Changes to the school websites, we're next on the list. So they've got me written down, we've got all the ideas, and then they're going to help us kind of work through that.
Okay, perfect. I think that wraps up everything. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Board Member James.
Just one point of clarification, and it may tie in Dr. Livingood's knowledge. So on slide 3, you talk about the ratios. And school counselors is the first item, and for high schools, we see the highest ratio. My question to you is, does that school counselor include magnet coordinators who are certified in school counseling and are serving in the role of a counselor to magnet students? And I think the answer is no, but that ratio would be less. So not every magnet coordinator at the high school level is certified in counseling, but I reflect back to the magnet coordinator when I was at Bellevue who was certified in school counseling. And he was essentially a 5th counselor to Bellevue High School. And so this ratio would actually be lower if we included the individuals serving in a counselor role or a like counselor role who are certified in counseling. And so I don't know if we are allowed to do that legislatively, but I do think the data would be more reflective of the work we're doing if we included that.
And to your point, so I will confirm it does not include those individuals. And the reason being is because for the 24-25 school year, we can't predict who specifically would be in those roles. And that particular position is open up, to your point, to other individuals that would not be certified. So that's why we did not include it in those numbers.
If you bring these numbers back before us at some point during the school year, I would just make the recommendation, just to make y'all look better, because it really is reflective of the work we're doing, to include individuals serving in like counselor positions who are certified in mental health counseling, because they do exist, and it would better acknowledge the work that's being done and make that ratio look more reflective of the effort we're giving onto our campuses. So that would be my just recommendation. Everything else looks great. I'm proud of the work you guys are doing and continue to do. This has been an evolution. COVID obviously made a huge shift in the work we do and the trauma that students have. And so I'm grateful for the work y'all are doing and the direction we're going. So.
Thank you, Board Member James. Any more comments from the board? Okay, I'll just say, thank you, as always, for everything that you do, both proactively and in terms of the reactive strategies. My eye was drawn to slide 12, which was the on-campus student Baker Act counts by incident. And, I think we're starting to get there with the proactive interventions, because I see the number of Baker Acts were going down. And I know that sometimes in order to get kids that are so intense the services they need, you have to have Baker Acts on record. So sometimes as part of the process, I think it's also really important to reiterate to the community as well that it isn't any of our staff that Baker Acts kids. That has to come from law enforcement in the school setting, and maybe a board-certified behavior analyst, but while that may be allowed, I don't think we do that. And if we did, it would be in conjunction with that law enforcement officer, too. So thank you, and look forward to continuing, the partnership to help every student succeed.
Thank you.
All right. If there's nothing further, we'll ask to see if there's any public comment. All right. Hearing none. Dr. Gullett, any wrap-up comments? Should we just...
Nothing additional. Thank you all for your feedback today.
Thank you. All right, we will move on to our typical comments and concerns. Attorney Powers, anything from legal?
Yes, ma'am. I just, as a note, I wanted to let everyone know that I recently was working with streamlining functions and avoiding duplication of efforts. For work session record keeping, our standard is going to be just like we have with board meetings, which is that it's not directly transcribed. Summaries of the comments are not available. It's going to be that the audiovisual record is the record. There's no vote needed to record, so the board clerk doesn't have to really record anything specific. The board may choose to include notes or specific board consensus for, within its, a summary at a work session, but otherwise that's not required. We could put something like that in there for indexing, for example, if the board achieved consensus on something during a work session. It could be a note. Otherwise, statutorily, the agenda itself accounts for the agenda, and then supplementally also the audio and video that is recorded are the actual record of the work session. And we already do that for board meetings as well. And of course, the summaries that you saw today, all of these are posted on board docs long-term. So all the information presented to the board is also then posted on board docs. So we have at least 3 different ways of making sure that all of our records regarding those items are public.
And archived.
And archived, correct.
All right, great, thank you.
And I think that concludes everything that I had from legal today, so thanks.
All right, thank you. Dr. Gullett?
Thank you, nothing additional, thank you.
Okay, Board Member Campbell?
Sure, it's a busy time of year, and looking forward to upcoming events that we have in multiple locations, multiple departments, multiple schools, graduations, all the things happening. And I'll just say last night's Take Stock in Children graduation was wonderful, and seeing one of the students that was a dual enrollment student from Westport High School who was in my class at CF this whole semester was one of our Take Stock in Children graduates, and he actually did his informative speech on Take Stock in Children earlier this year. So it was just kind of a full circle moment for me as an adjunct college professor, as well as serving as a school board member and a Take Stock in Children mentor. Just all the things last night. It was a wonderful event. In addition to all the other places we've all been lately, just looking forward to a great graduation season. That's all I got.
Awesome, thank you. Ms. Martinez?
Yes, Board. I wanted to let you guys know that I did attend a conference last week, and one of the takeaways, once the governor does sign, that will impact us, will be publications of ads. And just so that you know, moving forward, they will not need to be placed in the Ocala Gazette. Moving forward, we will only need to place ads on rulemaking and rule development and attorney-client sessions. So I don't know how that will look on board docs. I will have to get with technology to see what proof they can give me, because all of those will be placed on the website. All work sessions, all special board meetings, all board meetings will be placed on board docs on the website so that you can see them, so that the public can see them, so there will be no need for any ads, and that will definitely save the district quite a bit of money with ads. So just those few ads will be only ads that will be placed. So if you don't see them in the Ocala Gazette after July 1st, you'll know the governor has signed it and we're moving forward with that process.
Sounds good. Deregulation in our favor. Time-wise and financially. All right, Board Member James.
Thank you. So I have 2 things I want to bring back up. I think maybe in the last time we did comments, and we talked about it a little bit today regarding the next time we're going to talk about policy. I'm still looking for legal to bring forward potential dates, timeframes that we're going to discuss policy next, so that we can at least have a frame of reference for that. And then I have made a request, and I didn't have as many numbers as I have right now. And so if you'll just bear with me, I want to paint a picture for you guys and to try and highlight the importance of the request I have. I don't know which meeting, but of recent meetings, I made the remark that I believe we need to build at least the farther south elementary school with the wing attached to it. That building it for 860 student stations is not going to meet the need that we are looking to accomplish. And before I go forward, let me highlight what I believe our need to accomplish is. I believe that we're building new schools to eliminate the use of portables on our school sites. The purpose of a new school is to eliminate students having to get their education delivered to them in a portable. So if you are not aligned with that, then maybe you will not be aligned with what I'm about to say. But my belief is that a new school should eliminate that delivery model for students. They should no longer have to receive that education from a portable, because data supports that education in a brick and mortar setting is more effective. So when I've done a little numbers, and I want to just provide some numbers for you guys. When I look at the attendance report from August 10th, the first day of school, our membership report from August 10th, and I look at the two primary schools we would potentially be looking to rezone to the farther south school, the school that's right off 484 on Marion Oaks Manor. We're looking at Sunrise and Mose. Those are the two schools that are within 5 miles, basically, of that school. Now, we know that Sunrise and Mose both get an influx of students after Labor Day, but I'm just gonna paint the picture from August 10th to today. August 10th, Sunrise had 1,051 students. And as of yesterday, they had 1,418 students, which is an increase of 367 students since August. Mose had 901 students on August 10th, and now has 1,110 students, which is an increase of 209 students. If I take those two numbers and add them together, I see a collective increase in enrollment of 576 students to date this school year. When I look at the FISH report, that excludes portables for Mose and for Sunrise, because again, my goal personally is that a student doesn't have to have their education delivered in a portable. A new school should eliminate that possibility. Because the FISH number on the attendance report includes portables that can be included in FISH. So if I look at the brick and mortar capacity of Sunrise, it's 872. And the brick and mortar capacity for Mose is 987. So we are looking at a difference today of 546 students at Sunrise and 123 students at Mose over what the brick and mortar capacity is, which is a total of 669. So today, if all we did was take all of the students that are beyond the brick and mortar capacity at Sunrise and Mose, we would be at 669. We are building that school for 860 student stations. If we even assume that 576 more students will join those two schools next year, we are going to be looking at 1,245 students at the end of next school year that would be needing to go to relief to get Sunrise and Mose back to brick and mortar capacity. Which means there is no way in God's green earth we can open that farther south school with 860 student stations. Now, I've had conversation in the community with the contractors who are building those schools, and at this point in the game, it is impossible to open that school with the wing that is needed because we're too late in the game. And I'll be honest, 6 months ago, I didn't understand the severity of this. But I today cannot put my head on my pillow and know that this is not going to be an issue. So we can do what we did at Forest and basically a little bit later start the pad and build it so that by Christmas that wing would be finished. My plea to the board and to Dr. Gullett is that the facilities department makes every effort to, at a minimum, this 484 school, and I don't know if it's school X, Y, Z, I can't keep them all straight. So y'all know which one I'm talking about. Not the Winding Oak site, the one that's in Marion Oaks. I'm pleading that school open with a wing being built, and that wing that opens as closely after August of 25 as possible. Because if my student has been getting education in a portable for the last 3 years at Sunrise Elementary, and I have been promised this new school, your baby's gonna go to a new school, and then you move my baby to a new school, and then my baby has to get education in a portable, I will be so mad. And I, for once, want to be a board that people are like, man, they really thought that through. They looked at that and they looked at the long term and they realized the picture. And again, 6 months ago, I didn't understand the severity of this. When we opened Mose with 900 students, no big deal. This school year when it started, 900, okay. Well, we've added 209 students this school year. So I understand that costs money. And I understand that it is a plus negative and something's gonna have to go. And if that means that in this moment, we put the wing at Mose, which is already built into the loan, if we put the wing at Mose on the back burner, because we are going to be making sure we're addressing the capacity at Mo's, and we move that wing essentially from Mo's over to the new school. It's not quite perfect money. It's probably actually less expensive to do it the first time at the new school than it is to do it as an addition to Mo's. I, as a board member, can proclaim that I will prioritize finding funding for Moses Wing when the time comes for it to need a wing again. But what I know is that if we open that school at 860, we're going to have, I would put money, we're going to have 400 students in portables based on the way this growth is projecting. Or we're going to keep students in portables at Sunrise and Mo's, which I'm not okay with. If the whole purpose is to open the school, I do not want to keep students in portables. So my plea to the board is if you guys are even remotely in agreement with this, I want to see the facilities department provide a plan to us as to how we will move that money and prioritize the wing at the farther south 484 site. So I'm going to put that to the board, hopefully for a bit of a discussion this afternoon. I want to understand if you guys are in agreement with me and how we can make sure that we're doing what I think the community needs to see.
Thank you, Board Member James. It's compelling for sure.
I would be interested in seeing the plan, yes. Because every time I write out there, I don't have as solid data as you do, Dr. James, but every time I write out there and visit with those administrators, the kids are just coming and coming and coming every day. And as we see in our attendance report, they're coming every day. And so it would be nice for once for Marion County to be ahead of the game, or at least on the game. We just continue to be reactive. And in this instance, we could have the opportunity to be proactive.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Go ahead, Board.
And I'm sure a few weeks ago, I kind of mentioned this, not to the extent that Dr. James did, but I did mention this, that when we open those schools, we're going to open those schools at capacity. And we should not be opening new schools at capacity. There should be some breathing room. There should be no kids in portables. That should happen. I would love to see what we can do to make that happen, because what's the purpose of building all these schools and the kids are still in portables that are actually outdated, and we know that. So I would love to see what comes forward from this.
Thank you, Board Member Cummings. Board Member Campbell.
Sure. So I received similar data, but for a different reason. So I had recent data on Sunrise and Marion Oaks since the beginning of the school year. Mine was just January, February numbers, but more than 500 students had been enrolled since August in both of those two schools. And looking at the FISH report as well, I can fully get behind taking a look at it. But while we're looking at it, I also recommend looking at College Park, Saddlewood, and what we're doing in Winding Oaks, because they've had 350 students between those two schools. So if we're really talking about relieving pressure, which is all the whole purpose, and like you said, this costs money. I completely understand. I know we're adding a wing at Hammett, like we're doing this, but it's all Southwest pressure. And the number of students that we have had that have enrolled in Marion County Public Schools just since August is 6,979 students. Now, we've had some that have gone away, for sure, but I asked for the data specifically because I was curious to know how many are coming from other parts of Florida, how many are coming from outside of Florida, and how many are coming from other countries. And so that's part of what I was asking for, but also to see which school was taking on the most volume, and then a lot of that falls on one particular employee. And so some schools may have 2 new registrations in the entire year, and that's one employee's job, and then another school has 350, one person's job. So that's why I was asking for the data. But I do have very similar data. I completely concur with what your thought process is there. I like the concept of saying we're not just relieving pressure, we're actually alleviating a situation, and that includes getting kids out of portables. I can fully support that.
And if I might add, I want to just put my little asterisk that says, I fully understand that just because the zoning process and the capacity are two separate things. So when I give the number 576 over their brick and mortar capacity. I understand that that's not pure to zoning, and I want to acknowledge that, but I do think that the department that Mr. Ayers runs is capable of getting those schools very close to back to their brick and mortar capacity if we have planned accordingly on the other side. And so I, as a board member, am prepared to make the hard decision if that means that Hammett Bowen and Moe's wings have to get placehold because we are taking them back to their brick and mortar capacity to be able to move the money from that to the loan, to the new schools, all via the loan, because all of that money was approved via our loan. And I have talked briefly with Ms. Boston-Ellis about this because when we drafted the loan, we did say how we were going to spend it. So she was looking into how we would navigate, basically adjusting how we requested the money. But I do believe we have more than enough data to support what is happening, and I can get on board with the Winding Oak School as well. When we tour prototypes and we go to a school, we toured middle school prototypes like 3 weeks ago. West Boynton Beach, which is West Boynton Middle School, which is the prototype that the team, Mr. Jacobs specifically liked the most, was at a third of their capacity. And they are growing into complete capacity over 3 years. What a concept. Right? Now, they've had a sales tax and all the things for so long, and so they've had the money to be able to plan there. And I pray that in 20 years as a district, we have set ourselves up so that we can be that abundant, that we can do that. But at a minimum, I don't want someone's kid to go in a portable in a brand new school. I just can't even get behind I don't know what I would say to a parent if that's what we had to do. And so if there's even an opportunity for us to engage in a problem-solving approach to this, I am just pleading with the board that we engage in it because I want to say we've looked at all the options and this is just the best we've got. So I guess my request, it seems like the board is in agreement, my request to Dr. Gullett would be that Ms. Dobbins in the facilities department bring to the board some options for finances if that is what the board agrees on. Chair?
Yeah, what I'm thinking as well is that as far as the loan is concerned, it was for wings, and if we've determined that the wings are better and most urgently needed somewhere else, it's still building wings.
Yeah.
It's not like we're building an administrative building or, something like that that's way outside. So hopefully that wouldn't be our biggest obstacle. I am thinking about, and I don't disagree with any of this, I'll just say that. I'm also thinking about Maplewood, Ward Highlands, that have had perpetual portable cities, and what is our response to them? Like, it's a whole new school going in down there, and then here we linger, when is our turn? So I just kind of wanted to throw it to Dr. Gullett, and you've heard a lot here. You've heard general consensus for sure. Just wondering your thoughts.
Sure. I'll start with, since I'm a person who appreciates simplicity of response, the answer is certainly we can bring it to the board. So, and I think many of the things that I would mention to you have already been mentioned. We have rezoning underway already. That process has begun. We had a session here recently to obtain community input, and looking at the totality of all the schools, the populations that you all have brought up today are already in place. The other consideration is regarding the loan that was referenced. Yes, how that is addressed and whether or not we have the ability under those provisions of the loan to change that, we will have to seek answers to that and bring back to the board. And agree completely that there's a lot of growth. And so if those of us who have lived in areas of high growth, there's always the complex nature of what we can see and buildings being approved, but also you can't always know exactly in numbers, I think to Dr. Campbell's point of people moving in and the rate at which they move in and where they're moving from is constantly changing. And I think I say this all the time. It is my opinion and my observation, it's really happening in Marion County where it's happened elsewhere in the state. Now Marion County is experiencing a lot of other areas that it's happening faster than you expect. It's happening from different places you expect. And we are trying to keep up with that like many do in the state of Florida. But we will be happy to bring back to the board. I can't promise it won't cost us money. Can't promise that the loan has provided for those changes, but we'll certainly take a look at it and bring the pieces back together to see what our options are.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That concludes my comments. It's just really been on my heart, and I have told myself that if something is keeping me up at night and I don't feel comfortable with it, I'm going to at least try my best to solve that problem so that I can feel at peace with how we're proceeding. So I'm grateful for you guys willing to engage in it and try and be proactive and problem solving. I want to be the board that people say they really thought that through. There was space left to grow into. And I know that we don't have extreme luxuries with our finances, but if we can even try to do it, I would love to be able to be the board that makes that happen.
And if I may add to Board Member James' comment, that would be a great place for us to go in the future, for us to be able to forecast in and build into, and that's not been a luxury that we've been able to have.
Ever, I don't think.
And that's something that always bugged me because it was presented to me anyway that the state would only pay for a certain number of seats, and yet, like Saddlewood is a great example. The day that Saddlewood opened, there were portables there, you know?
Well,
and that never made sense to me.
And the state's not even paying for it anymore,
Right.
So
the whole thing's been convoluted for a really long time.
Yes. So that concludes my comments. Thank you for hearing me out. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Board Member Cummings.
Thank you. And thank you for bringing that forward to Dr. James. Like I said, I kind of mentioned that a couple of weeks ago because I don't think we should be opening schools and they're at capacity. That just doesn't make sense to me. There should be a way to kind of forecast that. My comments will be very brief. We are about to go into our graduations and baccalaureate season. And I want to thank Dr. Livingood for sending out the information, the schedule. I do have an ask, and I think I asked it last year as well. Some of us, all of us, many of us, try to attend all of the graduations. And there, once again, it happened last year for the first time, where there's a conflict with Denellen and Lake Ware being at the same time.
And Bellevue and Forest.
Bellevue and Westport.
Or Bellevue and Forest.
It's Bellevue and Westport, I think.
Nope. Bellevue and Forest.
Okay, sorry.
There's some conflicts, but not only with the graduation, but there's even conflicts with some of the baccalaureates. And as a parent, very seldom you see me that say this. As a parent, I need to be at my son's graduation, but I need to be other places to support those schools. So I'm just asking that they would consider looking at corporately, looking at those schedules, because again, some of us go to all of them, and we want to support all those schools. They're not just Sarah's schools, they're not just Lori's schools or Nancy's or Allison's, they're all of our schools, and they're all of our students, and we want to support those students and be there to walk them across the stage and shake their hands. So I just ask that we try as best as possible. And I know we're at different locations, the Livestock Pavilion, some at their schools, and some at World Equestrian, I get it. But I think that the conversations could put them where we can all be at the places we need to be. So I'm looking forward to the graduations. I know that you guys are as well. I'm looking to see this group of kids go across the stage and start the next chapter. We got a lot of things going on in our district. I do want to say this, and I'll close with this. Parents, you have a very diverse board, but this board is about doing the right thing for kids. And parents, when your kids are on buses and they're not acting right, there are consequences to that. So you're going to see some of us on buses. You're going to see some of us showing up at bus stops. And the fact of the matter is, if your kids can't handle those bus rides and are disruptive and are creating harmful, dangerous situations, there are consequences for those. And we have to, as a district, we have to try to make sure that those buses get home safely. You know, we're gonna fight to make sure the buses are on time. We're gonna fight to make sure the buses get the kids to school on time. But parents, we need your help to make sure that while the buses aren't on time or getting them to school, that the kids are acting appropriately on the bus and not putting our drivers and other students in jeopardy. So that concludes my comments. I just pray that everyone is really hearing what we're saying about this. We're at the end of the year. We don't need any accidents. We don't need any drama on buses. So.
Chair,
Thank you.
You made me think of something that I had mentioned and I wanted to say. I know that this is a big ask, Dr. Gullett, but when things are scheduled on board meeting nights, it not only means that none of us can go, because obviously our obligation to our elector is to be here, but also all of your staff that is here can't be there. And so while we were sitting here today, I was invited to a banquet for North Marion High School, and it's on Tuesday the 14th. And I had to say, regretfully, I'm going to be unable to make it. And if it was just us, I'd still feel this way, but I could understand a little bit more. But if it's a board meeting night, it's beyond just us. It's Dr. Livingood. It's all of the individuals that are here. And so if there's a way we can procedurally say that unless it is like the literal only day in the calendar, that board meeting nights are not scheduled for events, I would really, really, really gratefully appreciate that, because it makes it really, it's hard for me to say, especially things that are, because some of us have things that are really on our heart and causes that we're really aligned to, that we're just unable to be at because we have to be here. We get to be here. And so I want to be able to get to be everywhere. So saying what you said made me remember that, and I just wanted to ask that.
It has, thank you, Dr. James. It's been requested before, because that's come up. I agree, and I can't attend either, and it hurts my heart that I can't be at as many things as I can be or would like to be. And so we will take that back again and share that again. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a great problem to have, so many good things going on, and now that we're back from, the dark days of the pandemic and where nobody was gathering for anything, and now it's just like, I don't know if there's more than there was before that, or if it's just, we just had nothing going on, other than the basics for so long. So, yeah, that would definitely be my request too. It is hard, and I think it's just an awareness thing. It's one more thing for the school to have to think, oh yeah, is that a board meeting night? But we want them to think that because we do care, and we do want to all try to be there if we can, and staff, which was another great point. All right. Anything else? You're good, Board Member Cummings? Good? Okay. All right, Vice Chair Conrad.
Good afternoon, real quick. Just a couple of brief things I want to share and celebrate. Thank you again to our teams that presented and staff that presented this morning. There was a lot of great information and a lot of great conversation that we were able to have, so thank you all for that. I want to just, was able to participate in a few things the last few days, and I just want to give a shout out. Osceola had a Shrek the Musical performance in their auditorium. It was very fun, a lot of great music and students to celebrate. The superintendent's art show, I hadn't had the pleasure of attending that before, was really phenomenal. It was just so well done. And I just love being able to see and participate in all the way that we celebrate our students' success. Not just academically, not just athletically, but also art, music, all the areas. So I just wanted to say, if you haven't had the opportunity to go, it really is a great experience. You get to see a lot of great artwork. It really was amazing. The Take Stock for Graduation ceremony, thank you to the Public Ed Foundation. They also hosted Back in Black bowling event last week that was outside of the Teacher of the Year Gala. It was phenomenal. I believe they had over 30 schools participate, and it was a great way for everybody across the district to connect. Many administrators came, many teachers came, and it was just a great time to be together in fellowship outside of school. And so I was really particularly thankful for the opportunity that presented to our staff. Also, Forrest hosted the intern signing the other morning, and it was a great way to celebrate our new and upcoming teachers. And so just want to thank them for having us, and Ms. Morant, all of that it took to put that together was very sweet way to celebrate our new teachers. And that really is all I have. I'm just thankful for a great morning. Thank you, Chair.
Absolutely, thank you. And yes, it's definitely been another robust morning of passionate conversation and problem solving and ideas to just continue to move our district forward. I think, Ms. Martinez, you were out of town for FADS during Administrative Assistant Acknowledgement Day. So just wanted to thank you all over again for all that you do to keep us going in the right direction. Yes, I've been getting really good feedback on the fast testing at schools. They really like how quickly they're getting results. That just makes a world of difference, and it's been fun to go around to schools and see everything that they're doing to support the students and support the staff that is supporting the students. And instead of having it be so like high intensity, it's like, come on, let's just do our best, more of a cheering on, and having some of the lower grades cheering on the students that are going to be testing is really neat. Oakcrest was an example of that. And so that was something that's been really good to witness. The chaplaincy, that has been signed, and the new school year will be on us before we know it. I don't know if it has to be enshrined in policy or procedure to get started. I'll just be interested to see how many people are going to be interested in helping us, with that. And I know that there's processes procedurally that are going to have to be put into place for the consent. So I heard from the rest of the board too that we really want to see this be able to begin happening at the beginning of this school year, even if it's a few at a time. So I do echo getting some updates, regular updates now as we continue on and begin to look at embedding them, into our school communities as another resource of motivation and support. For everyone, really. Yes, teachers too. And I guess I'll just close by sharing that I think the Code of Student Conduct was just another great example today that we are so committed to updating our practices. We're so committed to looking at our policies. We're so committed to making sure that we are doing things at the highest level possible that it helps move us forward in our mission. And, I think about the years that I've been on the school board, what the huge and tremendous priorities of the year have been and how they have shifted and what we're moving into now. And so as we move along with this, it's going to be really interesting, and I know in the end gratifying, that we will have continued commitment to just adjusting, putting practices in place, updating practices. It comes to mind with all those paper work orders, where we were then compared to, where we are going. And as we identify these things and opportunities, to refine and enhance and better our practices, that's exactly what we're committed to doing. So continue to rock on. I'm excited for all these seniors that are getting to the tail end and everyone that is cheering them on and supporting them. So stay safe, be good on the bus, and we'll see you next time. If there's nothing else for the good of the cause, we'll go ahead and look at closing this work session at 12:43 p.m. All right. Have a great afternoon, everyone.